Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Tonight, I have got a story for you that is, well, it is going to make you think twice about that next swipe right. This is not some urban legend or a friend of a friend's tale. This happened to me, and even now, months later, the memory of it still makes my skin crawl. It is a kind of story that reminds you that the real monsters are not always hiding in the woods or under your bed. Sometimes, they are just a few clicks away, waiting for you to invite them into your life. So, grab a warm drink, dim the lights, and prepare yourself, because this is a story of how a seemingly innocent Tinder date turned into a living nightmare, and how I stumbled upon a secret that could have cost me everything. You know, the online dating scene, it is a necessary evil these days, is not it? After a string of genuinely awful experiences, the guy who showed up with his mom, the one who tried to sell me essential oils, the one who just never stopped talking about his ex, I was seriously considering throwing in the towel. My friends, bless their optimistic hearts, kept telling me to keep trying. You will find someone. Chloe, they would say, as if finding a decent human being on a dating app was like finding a four-leaf clover. But loneliness, as it always does, eventually won. So, one Tuesday night, scrolling through profiles, half-heartedly swiping, I matched with a guy named Mark. His profile picture was decent and smiling. Clean-cut guy with kind eyes, maybe late 20s, early 30s. His bio was short, witty, and seemed genuinely normal. He worked in tech, loved hiking, and had a surprisingly good taste in obscure indie bands. I remember a little flutter of hope, that familiar, naive optimism that this time it might be different. We started messaging. His replies were prompt, engaging, and he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We talked about everything from our favorite coffee shops to the best hiking trails in the area. It felt easy, natural, and after a week of chatting, he suggested we meet up. Now, usually, I prefer a neutral, public place for a first date, a coffee shop, a busy restaurant. But Mark had a different idea. He suggested we cook dinner at his place. He said he was an amazing cook, and it would be more relaxed than a noisy restaurant. He pitched it perfectly. I have got this great recipe for homemade pasta, and I make a mean tiramisu. Plus, my apartment has a really chill vibe, and we can actually talk without shouting over music. I hesitated. A first date at someone's apartment. It went against every stranger danger instinct I had. But he was so charming, so insistent, and honestly, after hearing about his tiramisu, I was a little intrigued. He even offered to pick me up, which I politely declined, opting to drive myself, so I had an easy exit if things went south. I told myself it was fine. He seemed normal. What could possibly go wrong? Famous last words, right? The night of the date. I put on my favorite dress, did my makeup, and tried to calm the butterflies in my stomach. A part of me was excited. A bigger part of me was just hoping he was not secretly a serial killer. I texted my best friend, Sarah, Mark's address, and told her to call me in 2 hours if she had not heard from me, just in case. You know, standard protocol for online dating. I pulled up to his apartment building, a modern, mid-rise complex in a trendy part of town. It looked nice, well maintained. A good sign. I thought. He met me in the lobby, a wide smile on his face, looking even better than his pictures. He opened the door to his apartment on the 4th floor, and I stepped inside. The apartment was surprisingly nice. Clean, tastefully decorated, with a minimalist aesthetic that felt both welcoming and a little impersonal. It smelled faintly of something delicious, garlic and herbs. I think. He immediately offered me a glass of wine, and we settled onto his plush sofa, chatting easily. He was a great conversationalist, funny and attentive. He asked about my day, my job, my hobbies, and actually listened to my answers. As he got up to start on dinner, he put on some soft jazz, and the atmosphere felt genuinely cozy. I watched him move around the kitchen, effortlessly chopping vegetables, his movements precise and confident. He seemed like the perfect catch. Too perfect, almost but I dismissed the thought. Maybe I was just overly cynical. We cooked together for a bit, laughing as I inevitably made a mess with the flour. The pasta was incredible, and the tiramisu lived up to its hype. We talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly, from light-hearted banter to deeper discussions about our lives and aspirations. I found myself genuinely enjoying his company, feeling a connection I had not felt in a long time. Maybe, just maybe this was it. Maybe I had finally found a good one. It was around 10 p.m. when I realized I needed to use a restroom. I excused myself, and Mark, ever the polite host, pointed me down the short hallway. Second door on the left, he said, smiling. Help yourself. The hallway was dimly lit, a soft glow emanating from the living room. I pushed open the bathroom door and stepped inside, flicking on the light switch. The bathroom was just as pristine as the rest of the apartment, sparkling white tiles, a sleek modern sink, a large mirror. I locked the door out of habit, a small click echoing in the quiet space. As I washed my hands, I glanced around. Everything was neat, organized. A small decorative shelf held a few scented candles and a tiny potted succulent. My eyes drifted over to the corner of the room, near the ceiling, where a small, unassuming air freshener dispenser was mounted. It was one of those automatic ones, the kind that miss a scent every few minutes. Nothing unusual, but something about it caught my eye. The bathroom light was bright, almost stark, and in that specific corner on the side of the air freshener unit, there was a tiny, almost imperceptible red pinprick of light. It was so small, so faint, that if I had not been looking directly at it, I would have missed it entirely. It pulsed ever so slightly like a tiny dormant eye. My heart gave a sudden, violent lurch in my chest. I froze, my hand still dripping water into sink. My breath hitched. That little red light, it looked exactly like the indicator light on a camera. A hidden camera. No, that is crazy. I told myself, it is probably just a sensor for the air freshener, or maybe it is a faulty unit. My mind raced, trying to find any logical explanation. But the pit in my stomach was growing, cold and heavy. I slowly, cautiously, took a step closer to the wall. The red light was still there, a tiny malevolent spark. My eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The air freshener unit itself seemed a little off. It was mounted slightly higher than I would expect, and the plastic casing did not quite look right. It was a little too chunky, a little too perfectly positioned to capture a wide view of the room. My hands started to tremble. I reached out, my fingers hesitant, and gently touched the side of the unit. It felt solid, heavier than an empty air freshener should be, and as my fingers brushed against it, I felt a faint, almost imperceptible vibration. Panic, cold and sharp, began to claw its way up my throat. This was not an air freshener. This was a camera, a hidden camera, in his bathroom, while I was on a date with him. My mind reeled. Every pleasant moment of the evening, every charming smile, every witty remark, suddenly twisted into something sinister. The delicious pasta turned to ash in my mouth. The cozy apartment felt like a trap. Mark's kind eyes now seemed predatory. I had to be sure. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. I carefully, slowly, reached up and gave a unit a gentle tug. It did not budge. It was firmly mounted. My fingers fumbled, trying to find a seam, a latch, anything. And then, I saw it. A tiny, almost invisible lens, no bigger than a pinhead, nestled in a small, expertly drilled hole in the front of the unit, angled perfectly to capture everything. The world seemed to tilt. My stomach churned. A wave of nausea washed over me, so intense I thought I might throw up. My hands were shaking so violently I had to grip the edge of the sink to steady myself. He was watching me. He had been watching me this whole time, from the moment I stepped into this bathroom. And probably he had done this to countless other women. The thought was a chilling, sickening realization. The violation, the utter breach of trust, the depravity of it all was overwhelming. My first instinct was to scream, to smash the thing, to run out of that apartment, screaming at the top of my lungs. But a more primal survival instinct kicked in. I was in his apartment, alone, with him. If I reacted, if I showed any sign that I knew, what would he do? The charming, polite facade could shatter, revealing something truly monstrous. I had no idea what he was capable of. I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I forced myself to think. I had to get out of here. And I had to do it without him knowing I knew. My eyes darted around the bathroom, looking for anything, any weapon, any escape route. But there was nothing. Just the pristine white tiles, the mirror reflecting my own terrified face. I forced myself to take another breath. Okay, Chloe, act normal. Act normal. I slowly, deliberately turned off the bathroom light. In the sudden darkness, the tiny red pinprick of light seemed to glow even brighter, a malevolent eye watching me. I quickly fumbled for my phone and my purse, which I had brought into the bathroom with me. My hands were so shaky it was hard to unlock it. I needed evidence. I turned on the camera on my phone, making sure the flash was off. With trembling fingers, I aimed it at the air freshener unit, trying to get a clear shot of that tiny red light, the barely visible lens. It was difficult in the dim light, but I snapped a few quick photos, hoping they would be clear enough. I also took a short video, just a few seconds, capturing the pulsing light. It was risky, incredibly risky, but I knew I needed something tangible. After I was done, I quickly shoved my phone back into my purse. Then, I forced myself to wash my hands again, slowly, deliberately, as if nothing was wrong. I even splashed a little water on my face, hoping to hide the flush of panic. I looked in the mirror, forcing a blank expression onto my face. Do not let him see anything. Do not let him know. I unlocked the bathroom door, my hand clamming on the doorknob. The sound of the lock clicking echoed in my ears, making me jump. I took one last, lingering look at that infernal red light, a promise that I would never forget it. I walked back into the living room, trying and project an air of casualness. Mark was standing by the kitchen island, wiping it down, humming softly to the jazz music. He looked up, a warm smile on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice smooth and friendly. My blood ran cold. He knows. I thought. He knows I was in there. He knows I was alone. He knows what that camera saw. Yeah, totally. I managed, my voice a little higher than usual. Just needed a minute. I forced a small, strained smile. He nodded, oblivious. Or so I hoped. "Dessert is ready when you are," he said, gesturing to the tiramisu on the counter. My stomach churned. The thought of eating another bite of anything in this apartment, knowing what I now knew, was abhorrent. I had to get out. Now, you know what, Mark, I said, trying to sound apologetic, regretful. This has been an amazing evening, truly. The food was incredible. But I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow, and I completely forgot about it. I really should get going. His smile faltered just for a split second. My heart pounded. Did he suspect? Did he see through my flimsy excuse? "Oh," he said, the warmth in his voice dimming slightly. "That is a shame. I thought we could have some more wine, maybe watch a movie." His eyes lingered on mine for a beat too long, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was a possessive look, a look that told me he was not used to being told no. I really wish I could. I said, try and sound genuinely disappointed. But it is a big client, and I need to be sharp. I am so sorry. I started moving toward the door, slowly, deliberately, trying not to look like I was fleeing for my life. Every step felt like walking on eggshells. I could feel his eyes on my back, burning into me. Well, he said, and he followed me, his footsteps silent on the plush carpet. The least I can do is walk you to your car. No, absolutely not. The last thing I wanted was to be alone with him in a dark parking lot. Oh, you really do not have to, I said, forcing a bright, dismissive laugh. I parked right out front. It is totally fine. You have been such a wonderful host. Really. I fumbled with the lock on his door, my fingers clumsy. He was standing right behind me. Too close. I could feel the warmth of his body, the faint scent of his cologne. My breath hitched. I just wanted to be outside. Nonsense, he said, his voice closer now, lower. It is late. A lady should not walk alone. His hand reached past me, not to open the door, but to rest on the doorknob, effectively blocking my exit. My blood ran cold. This was it. He knew. He was going to stop me. My mind raced, frantically searching for an escape. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, making my hands shake even more. Mark, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but trying to keep it steady. I really need to go. He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. Just one more drink. Chloe, we were having such a good time. His hand remained on the doorknob, a barrier. My eyes darted to his face. His smile was still there, but it did not reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, assessing. And I saw a flicker of something else in them, something dark, something predatory. I really can't. I stammered, my voice cracking. I am sorry. I really have to go. I took a desperate gamble. I suddenly pushed past him, my elbow catching his arm, and yanked the door open. He was momentarily caught off guard, his grip on the doorknob loosening. I did not wait. I bolted out into the hallway, not looking back, not daring to. I could hear his voice behind me, calling my name, but I ignored it. I fumbled for the elevator button, my thumb pressing it repeatedly, frantically. The elevator doors felt like they were taking an eternity to open. I could hear his footsteps now, coming down the hallway. He was pursuing me. The doors chimed and opened, revealing an empty car. I practically threw myself inside, stabbing the L button for the lobby as the doors began to close. I caught a glimpse of Mark, standing at the end of the hallway, a chillingly calm expression on his face, his eyes fixed on me. He was not smiling anymore. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. The doors closed, cutting off his gaze, but I could still feel it. I leaned against the cold metal of the elevator wall, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. Every muscle in my body was screaming. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity. Each floor passed in a blur, and I could not shake the feeling that he would somehow appear, that he would be waiting for me when the doors opened. When they finally did, I practically sprinted through the lobby, out the main doors, and into the cool night air. I did not stop until I reached my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely insert it into the ignition. I locked the doors, started the engine, and peeled out of the parking lot, my tires squealing. I did not even care about getting a ticket. I just needed to be away from him, away from that building. I drove for what felt like miles, not really knowing where I was going, just needing distance. I finally pulled over into a brightly lit gas station parking lot, my entire body shaking, tears streaming down my face. I pulled out my phone, my fingers still trembling, and called Sarah. Sarah. I choked out, my voice raw with tears. He had cameras. In the bathroom. I saw it. Sarah was instantly alarmed. She stayed on the phone with me, calming me down, telling me to drive straight to her place. I did. I pulled into her driveway, my car still running, and practically collapsed into her arms. It took me a long time to tell her everything, the words tumbling out in a rush of fear and disgust. She listened patiently, her face growing grimmer with each detail. When I showed her the photos and video I would manage to take, her eyes widened in horror. The tiny red light, the almost invisible lens, it was undeniable. The next morning, after a restless night filled with nightmares, Sarah insisted on coming with me to the police station. I was still shaken, but cold fury had started to replace the raw terror. He could not get away with this. At the station, we spoke to a detective. I told him everything, from the initial pleasantries to the sickening discovery, to the terrifying escape. I showed him the pictures and video evidence on my phone. The detective, a gruff man named Miller, listened with a stoic expression. He nodded occasionally, asked a few questions. But as I finished, I could see the skepticism in his eyes. MS. Hayes, he said, his voice neutral. I understand this was a very disturbing experience for you, and we take allegations like this seriously. But a small red light on an air freshener, it is not exactly concrete evidence of crime. My heart sank, but I saw the lens. I felt it. I have the pictures, the video. The video is dark, and the light is very faint, he explained, holding my phone at arm's length. It could be a sensor, a defect. Without physical evidence, without a warrant to search his apartment, it is very difficult to proceed. We can't just barge into someone's home based on an assumption. An assumption. I almost yelled. He was recording me. He was violating my privacy. What if he has other videos? What if he has done this to other women? He sighed, running a hand over his face. We can try to contact him, ask him to come in for questioning. But he is not obligated to cooperate. And if he denies it, without a warrant, our hands are tied. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. It was exactly what I had feared. The system was not equipped for this kind of insidious, hidden crime. What about the app? Sarah interjected. Can't you get his information from Tinder? We can issue a subpoena, Detective Miller said. But that takes time. And even if we get his real name, his address, it still leads back to the same problem: no physical evidence, no direct proof of a crime. I left the police station feeling defeated, frustrated, and utterly terrified. They filed a report, gave me a case number, and told me to call if anything else happened. Be extra vigilant, they advised. The same vague, unhelpful advice I would heard before. The days and weeks that followed were a blur of paranoia. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every unexpected sound made me jump. I changed my locks, installed a security camera outside my apartment, and started carrying pepper spray. I deleted all my dating apps, swearing them off for good. I did not hear from Mark directly. No texts, no calls. But the silence was almost worse than any threat. It was the silence of a predator, waiting, watching. I kept checking my social media, my old Tinder profile, half expecting to see some sign of him. Nothing. It was as if he had simply vanished. But the feeling never vanished. That feeling of being watched. One afternoon, about a month after the incident, I was at a grocery store, just trying to get some normalcy back in my life. I was pushing my cart down an aisle, lost in thought, when a familiar scent wafted past me. A very specific cologne. Mark's cologne. My blood ran cold. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. I slowly, hesitantly, turned my head, and there he was, standing at the end of the aisle, looking at a display of fresh produce. Mark. He was wearing different clothes, a casual hoodie, but it was unmistakably him. His back was to me, but I could feel his presence, radiating a chilling familiarity. My breath hitched. Was he following me? Was this a coincidence? Or was he just out living his life, while I was trapped in this nightmare? I quickly ducked behind a tall shelf of cereal boxes, my heart pounding like a drum. I peered around the corner, my eyes fixed on him. He was still there, browsing the vegetables, completely unaware of my presence. Or was he? He eventually moved on, pushing his cart down the next aisle. I stayed hidden my body trembling, until I was sure he was gone. Then, I abandoned my cart, left the store, and drove home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. I called Detective Miller again, my voice shaking. He listened patiently, but his response was the same. MS. Hayes, unless he directly threatens you or you have proof he is following you, there is not much we can do. It is a public place. He has every right to be there. I knew he was right, but it offered no comfort. It only reinforced the terrifying reality I was on my own. The incident at the grocery store plunged me back into the depths of paranoia. Every time I left my apartment, I scanned the streets, constantly checking my rearview mirror. I started taking different routes to work, changing my routine, hoping to become an unpredictable target. I could not shake the feeling that he was out there, somewhere, still watching. What if he had other cameras? What if he had installed them somewhere else? What if he had somehow gotten into my building? My mind spiraled into a vortex of terrifying possibilities. I would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I heard a creak outside my window or a faint whisper in the dark. The worst part was a profound sense of violation. It was not just about the camera in the bathroom. It was about the invasion of my trust, my safety, my sense of privacy. He had taken something from me that night, something precious and irreplaceable. He had taken away my peace of mind. I never found out what happened to Mark. The police never found any physical evidence, and without a confession or a clear threat, their investigation went nowhere. He simply disappeared from my life, leaving behind a gaping wound of fear and distrust. I still think about him sometimes. That charming smile, those kind eyes, the effortless conversation. How easily he fooled me. How easily he could be fooling someone else right now. And it makes me sick to my stomach. So, if you are out there, scrolling through profiles, looking for that connection, just be careful. Be so careful. Because sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most normal. And sometimes the monsters are not hiding in the shadows. They're inviting you into their homes with a warm smile, a delicious meal, and a tiny red, watchful eye. And you might not even know you are being watched until it's almost too late. You know, online dating, it is a weird beast. On the one hand, it is a necessary evil these days, right? How else are you supposed to meet people when your social circle has calcified and your job involves staring at a screen all day? On the other hand, it is a minefield, a digital wilderness filled with questionable bios, catfish, and occasional, genuinely terrifying encounter that leaves you wondering if you should just buy a dozen cats and call it a day. I have had my share of bad dates. Believe me, some awkward, some boring, some just plain strange. After a particularly eventful last experience, I would have been pretty hesitant to jump back in. But loneliness, it is a persistent little bugger. So, a few months later, there I was again, swiping through profiles on a Tuesday night, half watching some terrible reality TV, half hoping to find someone who was not a walking red flag. My name's Sarah, and I work in marketing for a tech company downtown. It is one of those modern, open-plan offices on the 10th floor of a sleek glass high-rise. Think minimalist decor, glass conference rooms, a specific, rather abstract mural in the main lobby, and a very particular, rather expensive espresso machine in our main break room. It is all very Silicon Valley chic, and generally, I like it. It is a safe, predictable environment, a place where I spend a solid 40-plus hours a week. Or so I thought. That night, amidst the endless parade of gym selfies and fishing pictures, a profile popped up that actually caught my eye. His name was Ethan, mid-30s, handsome in a rugged, outdoorsy way, with kind eyes and a genuinely charming smile. His bio was witty, intelligent, and did not mention anything about vibes or manifesting. He seemed normal, promising, even. I swiped right. To my surprise, it was a match. A little thrill went through me. Maybe this time it will be different. I clicked on his profile to look through his pictures again, a habit I had developed to try and spot any hidden weirdness. There were the usual travel photos, hiking in the mountains, a beach shot, a picture with a golden retriever that looked like it belonged on a calendar. All perfectly normal, perfectly appealing. Then I scrolled to the fourth picture. My finger paused. My heart did a little stutter step. It was a photo of a lobby, a very sleek, very modern lobby. And my blood ran cold because I knew that lobby. I knew the specific, abstract mural on the far wall, a swirling vortex of deep blues and greens. I knew the design of the reception desk, a long, curved slab of polished concrete. I knew the distinctive, angular light fixtures hanging from the ceiling. It was the lobby of my office building. I stared at it, frozen. No way. This had to be a mistake, a coincidence. Maybe it was a common architectural style. I mean, a lot of modern buildings look alike, right? I tried to rationalize it, my mind scrambling for any explanation that was not that. I scrolled to the next picture. This one was taken inside a break room. Again, modern, clean. There were a set of distinctive blue and green ergonomic chairs around a communal table. And in the background, unmistakable, was a specific high-end espresso machine that my company had splurged on last year, complete with our company's minimalist logo subtly printed on the side. There was even a stack of our branded mugs next to it. It was my break room, the one I used every single day. A cold dread began to seep into my bones. My rationalizations crumbled. This was not a coincidence. This was not a common design. These were specific, unique elements of my workplace. But it got worse. The next photo was taken from an elevated perspective, looking out over an open-plan office floor. My breath hitched. I could see the familiar rows of desks, the specific monitor stands, the glass walls of the conference rooms, the distinctive ceiling tiles. And in the foreground, slightly out of focus, was a specific, rather quirky potted plant that sat on a filing cabinet near the entrance to my department. It was my office floor. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. My hands started to shake so badly, I almost dropped my phone. This was not just a workplace. It was my workplace. The place where I spent the majority of my waking hours. The place I considered safe. I frantically scrolled back up the What did it say about his job? Consultant. Tech industry. No company name. No specific location. Just vague, generic terms. This was not some colleague I had not met yet. This was not a contractor. If he worked in the building, even for another company, he would have some identifiable information, right? Especially if he was confident enough to post pictures of his workplace. No, this was something else entirely. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, the images from Ethan's profile burned into my mind. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I kept seeing his face, that charming smile, juxtaposed with the unsettling familiarity of my office. How? How did he get those photos? More importantly, why did he post them? Was it a warning? A twisted game? The next morning, getting ready for work felt different. The usual Monday morning rush was replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. My commute, usually a mindless podcast listening ritual, became an exercise in hypervigilance. Every face on the train, every glance, felt like a potential threat. When I walked into the lobby of my building, I paused. I looked at the mural, the reception desk, the light fixtures. They were exactly as they were in Ethan's photo. A shiver ran down my spine. I forced myself to walk to the elevators, trying to look normal, trying to appear unaffected. The moment I stepped onto the 10th floor, the paranoia kicked in full force. Every colleague seemed to be looking at me. Every casual conversation felt like it was about me. I knew it was irrational, but I could not shake the feeling of being watched. I scanned the office, subtly, try and spot anyone unfamiliar, anyone who resembled Ethan. There was no one, just the usual faces, the usual hustle and bustle. For the next few days, work became a waking nightmare. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder. Every time someone walked past my desk, I flinched. I started taking different routes to the break room, to the restrooms, even to the printer. I felt like a hunted animal, constantly aware of my surroundings. Then, the small things started happening. I have a specific pen, a rather fancy limited edition one I got as a gift that I always keep in a particular slot in my pen holder. One morning, I came in and it was not there. It was lying on my keyboard, perfectly centered, as if someone had deliberately placed it there. I knew I had not left it there. I was meticulous about my desk. I tried to dismiss it, maybe a cleaner had moved it, but my gut clenched. Another day, I found a sticky note on my monitor. It simply said, "Good morning, Sarah." No initials, no context, just my full name. Most people at work call me S or Hey Sarah. The formality of it, combined with the lack of a sender, felt incredibly creepy. I ripped it off, my hand shaking, and threw it in the trash. His messages on the dating app did not help. They were still perfectly normal, almost disarmingly so. "How was your Monday? Hope you are having a good week." But now, every message felt loaded, sinister. One afternoon, after a particularly brutal client call that left me feeling drained and frustrated, a message popped up: "Rough day at work." It was too specific, too close to home. I had not posted anything on social media. I had not told anyone outside of my immediate team about the call. That night, I decided I could not just sit there and let this paranoia consume me. I needed to know. I needed proof. I opened Ethan's profile again, my finger hovering over the block button. But first, I needed to confirm. I took out my phone and, trying to be discreet, snapped a picture of the mural in the lobby on my way out. I compared it to Ethan's picture. Identical. No doubt. I did the same with the espresso machine in the break room the next morning. Same result. This was not a trick of the light. This was not some other building. He was here, or he had been here. I tried to subtly ask around. "Hey, have we had any new contractors in recently? Or maybe a new security guy?" My colleagues just shrugged. Not that I know of. Why? I just mumbled something about seeing an unfamiliar face and being curious. No one knew an Ethan matching his description. No new hires. No new long-term visitors. The escalation came 2 days later. I was scrolling through my feed, trying to distract myself during lunch, when I saw that Ethan had posted a new picture. It was a close-up of a framed motivational poster. It was one of those generic corporate posters with an inspiring quote and a blurry nature scene. But this was not just any poster. This was a specific, slightly faded poster that hung right outside the entrance to my department, next to the water cooler. It was a small, almost insignificant detail, but it was unique enough to be unmistakable. My blood ran cold for the 100th time. He was not just in the building. He was on my floor. He was near my desk. He was watching me. I knew I could not ignore it anymore. I had to confront him, indirectly at least. My fingers trembled as I typed out a message. I tried to sound casual, almost amused, despite the terror coiling in my stomach. "Hey, Ethan." I wrote, "Your profile photos are really cool. That office building looks incredibly familiar. Do you happen to work at company name?" I hit send and immediately regretted it. My stomach dropped. What if he got angry? What if I was just confirming that I knew he was watching me? The agonizing wait for his reply felt like an eternity. Every notification sound made me jump. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was him. I opened the message, my heart pounding in my ears. "Funny you say that. His message read, "It is a pretty popular spot. I guess great minds think alike." Huh? My breath hitched. He was being evasive. He was not confirming, but he was not denying either. He was playing with me. And then a second message popped up from him, almost immediately after first. I particularly liked the view from the 10th floor. It said, "Especially the corner office." Very inspiring. My desk was not a private corner office, but it was in a corner of the open plan space, with a large window overlooking the city. It was close enough. Too close. The blood drained from my face. He knew. He absolutely knew. He knew my floor. He knew where. I sat. He was not just in the building, he was observing me, specifically, intimately. He was a stalker. Panic set in. I immediately blocked him on the app. Then I went straight to HR and security. I explained everything, showing them the pictures, recounting the strange messages and the moved pen. They listened, serious, but also a little skeptical. MS, Miller, the security head, said, "We will definitely keep an eye out. We will check the visitor logs, review camera footage." But without any direct threats or actual physical harassment, it is hard to do much more than that. "We recommend you block him and be extra vigilant." Extra vigilant. I wanted to scream. He knows where I work. He knows where I sit. But they did not have much else to offer. They promised to increase patrols, especially after hours. It was a hollow reassurance. For the next few days, I was a wreck. I started leaving work as early as possible, practically sprinting out the door at 5 p.m. I refused to be alone in the office. I ate lunch at my desk instead of the break room. I was a bundle of nerves, constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every shadow. But a big project deadline loomed. I had no choice but to stay late one evening. Most of my team had left, and the office slowly emptied out. By 7 p.m., it was just me and a few other dedicated souls scattered on different floors. The silence of the vast office was deafening, punctuated only by the hum of the servers and the distant city sounds. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, taking on menacing shapes. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting to Ethan. Was he here? Was he watching me right now? I kept imagining his eyes on me, his silent presence. Around 8 p.m., I decided I needed a break, a quick walk to clear my head, maybe some water from the break room. I stood up, stretched, and started walking down the main corridor towards the kitchen area. The lights were dimmed in parts of the office, casting long, eerie shadows. As I approached the corner, leading into the break room, I heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible sound. The gentle click of a door closing, somewhere further down the hall, near the unused executive suites. My heart leaped into my throat. It was not one of my colleagues. I knew their schedules. I froze, listening. Nothing, just the hum of the building. My mind tried to rationalize it again. Just the wind, or a cleaner. But the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I forced myself to keep going. I needed that water. I needed to prove to myself that I was not completely losing my mind. I turned the corner into the break room, and there he was, standing by the espresso machine, exactly where I would seen it in his photo, was Ethan. He was not wearing a suit or anything that resembled office wear. He had on a dark, casual jacket and jeans. No ID badge. He was just standing there, perfectly still, looking directly at me. His eyes met mine and a slow, unsettling smile spread across his face. It was not the charming smile from his profile. This was a predatory smile, a smile of possession. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "Finally, I knew you would be here." My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. My breath hitch caught in my throat. I could not move. I was paralyzed by sheer terror. He started walking towards me, slowly, deliberately. Not rushing, not aggressive, but utterly confident, like a predator stalking its prey. "I have been waiting for you," he continued, his voice still low, almost conversational, which only made it more horrifying. "I have watched you for weeks. You are even more beautiful in person than in your profile pictures. We are meant to be." My mind screamed. He was not just watching me from afar. He was in here. He had been for weeks. "How? How did you get in?" I finally managed to croak out, my voice barely a whisper. He chuckled, a low, unnerving sound. "Oh, that is easy. I used to work here. Security. I know all the blind spots, all the old access codes. They changed them when I left, but not all of them. And some doors. Well, they are not as secure as they look, especially after hours." He gestured vaguely around the empty office. "It is amazing what you can learn when you are paid to watch people. And you, Sarah, you are a creature of habit. So predictable." He was closer now, only a few feet away. His eyes never left mine, a disturbing intensity in their depths. "I saw your profile. Recognized you immediately. You are even better than I imagined. It is fate, do not you think?" The word fate sent a fresh wave of terror through me. This was not a misunderstanding. This was obsession. I snapped out of my paralysis. This was not a conversation. This was a trap. "Get away from me!" I screamed, my voice cracking, finally finding its power. He flinched slightly, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Now, Sarah, do not be like that. We can talk." He reached out a hand towards me. That was all I needed. My eyes darted around the break room. There was a heavy decorative ceramic vase on a small side table, usually filled with fake flowers. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed it, ignoring the pain as my nails dug into ceramic. I swung it wildly, throwing it at him with all my might. He ducked, the vase smashing against the wall behind him with a loud crash, sending ceramic shards scattering across the floor. The noise, sharp and sudden in the quiet office, startled him, giving me a precious second. I did not hesitate. I turned and ran, my legs pumping, my heart hammering against my ribs. I did not head for the elevators too slow, too easy for him to block. I bolted for the emergency exit stairwell, the heavy fire door a beacon of hope. I heard his footsteps behind me, a quick, determined rhythm. "Sarah, do not run. We can talk about this." His voice was no longer soft. It was laced with a chilling anger. I fumbled with the bar on the emergency exit door, my hands shaking so violently I almost missed it. I shoved it open with a desperate shove, plunging into dark, concrete stairwell. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing ominously. I did not stop. I flew down the stairs, 10 flights, my breath coming in ragged gasps, my lungs burning. I could still hear his footsteps, faint but persistent, above me. He was still coming. Finally, I burst out onto the ground floor, into the main lobby. It was empty, the security desk deserted. My stomach dropped. I had hoped for a security guard, anyone, but he knew the blind spots. He knew the schedules. My eyes darted to the main glass doors. They were locked after hours, only accessible with a key card. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I was trapped. Then I remembered the side exit, the one used for deliveries. Usually, it had a simple push bar designed for easy egress in an emergency. It was further down past the reception desk. I ran, my legs screaming in protest, my vision blurring. I slammed into the push bar, throwing, "Hey everyone, Alex here. And man, do I have a story for you tonight. You know, I have always been a pretty skeptical guy. I have heard all the urban legends, seen all the scary movies, but I never thought I would be living one. Not until a few years ago. This is not one of those stories where I think something happened or I might have seen something. This is a story about when my entire world got flipped upside down, and I came face to face with pure, unadulterated evil. And it all started, like so many modern horror stories do, with a dating app. I was in my late 20s, working a pretty standard desk job, living in a decent apartment in a mid-sized city. My social life was fine, but dating, that was a whole other beast. I would try it at all bars, set up some friends, even a few of those cringe-worthy speed dating events. Nothing really stuck. So, naturally, I turned to the apps. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, you name it. I probably had a profile. It was mostly a parade of awkward small talk, ghosting, and dates that went nowhere. I was getting pretty jaded, honestly. Every swipe felt like another roll of the dice in a game I was clearly losing. Then I matched with Sarah. Her profile was great. She was a redhead, stunning smile, pictures of her hiking, cooking, even one with a dog. She seemed genuine, not like some more curated profiles you see out there. We started chatting, and immediately it was different. Our conversation flowed so easily. We talked about everything: our favorite obscure indie bands, our shared love for cheesy horror movies, our mutual frustration with online dating. She was witty, intelligent, and just charming. We messaged back and forth for a solid week, and with every message, I found myself getting more and more excited. It felt like I would finally hit the jackpot. Like, really hit it. After a week of non-stop texting, she suggested we meet up. She picked to place a new, slightly out-of-the-way bistro called a Gilded Spoon. It sounded fancy, a little romantic, but not overly stuffy. She said she had heard great things about their artisanal cocktails and wanted to try it out. I agreed, of course. My stomach was doing flips, a mix of nerves and genuine anticipation. I even went out and bought a new shirt. I wanted to make a good impression. This felt like it could be the one. The day of the date finally arrived. I spent way too much time getting ready, fussing over my hair, making sure my shoes were clean. I double-checked the address she would send me. It was on the edge of town, a bit of a drive, past some industrial parks, and then into an area that got progressively more rural. The GPS said it was nestled among some older, renovated buildings. I figured it was one of those trendy spots that takes over an old warehouse or something. I left my apartment with plenty of time to spare, wanting to get there a little early, scope out the place, maybe grab a quick drink at the bar to calm my nerves. The drive was uneventful at first, but as I got closer, the surroundings started to feel off. The industrial parks gave way to stretches of dense woods, then a few scattered, run-down houses, and finally, nothing but trees on either side of the road. There were no streetlights out here, and the sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows. My GPS finally announced, "You have arrived." I looked around. There was no bistro, no Gilded Spoon, just a gravel pull-off next to a dense thicket of trees, and beyond that, an old, dilapidated, seemingly abandoned barn. No lights, no cars, no sign of life. My heart sank. Had I gotten the address wrong? Was this some kind of sick prank? I pulled my car onto the gravel, my tires crunching loudly in the twilight quiet. I pulled out my phone, double-checked the address. Nope, this was it. The exact pin she would sent me. A cold knot started forming in my stomach. This was not right. This was not a bistro. This was nothing. I texted Sarah. "Hey, I think I am. Here, but I do not see the Gilded Spoon. Am I at the right spot?" No immediate reply. My phone showed the messages delivered, but not read. A flicker of unease turned into a full-blown alarm bell. I started to feel exposed, vulnerable, sitting there alone in my car on a deserted road. I considered just turning around and going home. This was too weird. My gut was screaming at me to get out of there. But then, just as I was about to put the car in reverse, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Hey, so sorry my phone died. Battery's been acting up. I am just pulling up now." I am actually parked a little further down the road, closer to the barn. My car has been making a weird noise, so I figured I would wait for you there. It is a bit of a walk, but I promise the cocktails are worth it. A wave of relief washed over me, quickly followed by a fresh surge of confusion. Closer to the barn. What was she talking about? And why would she park further away if her car was having issues? Still, the relief was potent. Okay, maybe this was just a quirky, off-the-beaten-path kind of place. Maybe the bistro was actually in the barn, a super exclusive, speakeasy type of vibe. My rational brain was trying desperately to make sense of it, to push down the growing dread. I took a deep breath, killed the engine, and stepped out of my car. The air was cool, damp, and smelled of pine needles and damp earth. Crickets chirped loudly, and a distant owl hooted. The silence, broken only by nature's sounds, felt heavy. I locked my car, casting a nervous glance at the darkening woods. My phone flashlight illuminated the gravel path as I started walking, heading in the direction Sarah had indicated. I walked for about 50 yards past the old barn, which looked even more ominous up close. Its windows were boarded up, its paint peeling. It looked like it had not been used in decades. There was no sign of another car, no sign of Sarah. My unease returned with a vengeance, stronger this time. I pulled out my phone again, ready to call her when I heard it. A rustle in the trees to my left. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding weak and uncertain in the vast quiet. Another rustle, closer this time. Then shadows detached themselves from the deeper darkness of the woods. 3 of them, tall, broad figures. My mind, in a desperate attempt to cling to normalcy, immediately thought hikers, hunters. But then I saw them more clearly as they stepped into the fading light. They were wearing masks. Not Halloween masks, not elaborate costumes. These were simple, terrifyingly plain, featureless white masks, like something you would see in a silent film or a twisted mime act, with only dark slits for eyes and small, almost imperceptible line for a mouth. They wore dark, nondescript clothing hoodies, cargo pants. They moved with a chilling, synchronized purpose. My blood ran cold. This was not a prank. This was not hikers. This was something else entirely. "Hey," I yelled, trying to project confidence I did not feel. "Can I help you guys?" They did not answer. They just kept coming, slowly, deliberately, fanning out as they approached me. The one in the middle, slightly taller than the others, held something in his hand. It looked like a heavy, blunt object, maybe a pipe or a thick branch. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. Every instinct screamed at me to run. I spun around, ready to bolt back to my car. But before I could even take a full step, a hand clamped down on my shoulder with surprising force. I cried out, struggling, but another figure was already there, blocking my path. They moved with an efficiency that suggested training, or perhaps a lot of practice. I threw a punch, connecting with the shoulder of one of them. It felt like hitting a brick wall. He did not even flinch. That is when the third one came from behind, and something hard slammed into the back of my head. The world tilted, then spun. A blinding flash of white, then a dull, throbbing pain. My knees buckled as I fell. I felt rough hands grab me, hoisting me up. A coarse sack was shoved over my head, plunging me into instant darkness, the smell of damp canvas filling my nostrils. Duct tape was slapped over my mouth, tight and suffocating. My arms were pulled roughly behind my back, and I felt the cold, hard bite of zip ties cinching my wrists together. I thrashed. I kicked. I tried to scream, but it was useless. They were too strong, too many. My struggles were met with a low, guttural grunt from one of them, and then I was lifted, my feet dangling uselessly. I was carried for a short distance, then unceremoniously shoved into what felt like the back of a vehicle. The space was cramped, suffocating. I could feel the cold metal floor beneath me, The rough fabric of the sack against my face. The air smelled stale, of old gasoline and something vaguely metallic. I heard the thud of a door closing, then the click of a lock. The engine rumbled to life, and the vehicle started moving, slowly at first, then picking up speed. My mind was a chaotic storm of fear and confusion. Who were these guys? What did they want? Ransom? Organ harvesting? My imagination, fueled by every horror movie I would ever seen, conjured up the most gruesome scenarios. I tried to calm my breathing, to think. I focused on the bumps in the road, the turns the vehicle was making. Left, right, a long straight stretch, another left. It was impossible to keep track. The disorientation was overwhelming. The drive felt like an eternity. Every bump sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. My head throbbed where I would been hit, and the zip ties were digging painfully into my wrists. I tried to yell, but the duct tape held firm, only allowing muffled grunts to escape. Tears of frustration and terror welled in my eyes, mixing with the sweat on my face. Finally, the vehicle slowed, then stopped. The engine idled for a moment, then cut out. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by my own ragged breathing and the frantic pounding of my heart. I heard voices outside, low and muffled, too indistinct to understand. Then, the back door creaked open, letting in a sliver of cool, fresh air. Rough hands grabbed me again, pulling me out. My legs, stiff from being cramped, almost gave out beneath me. They dragged me along, my feet scraping against what felt like gravel, and up a few steps, and through another door. The air inside was colder, damper, and smelled of mildew and stale wood. My ears picked up the faint drip of water, the distant creak of old pipes. I was pushed forward, stumbling, until I was forced down into a chair. The chair felt hard, cold, and metallic. My hands, still bound, were pulled around the back of the chair and secured with more zip ties. My ankles were also bound, tightly. I tried to struggle, to test the restraints, but they were solid. I was completely helpless. Then, the sack was ripped from my head. My eyes, accustomed to the darkness, blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim light. I was in a room, a basement, concrete walls, stained and peeling, stretched up to a low, unfinished ceiling with exposed pipes. A single bare bulb, hanging from a wire, cast a weak, flickering yellow light, creating long, dancing shadows that made the room feel even more sinister. The air was cold, damp, and heavy. And then I saw them. The three masked men stood before me, unmoving, silent. Their featureless white masks seemed to absorb the dim light, making their faces utterly blank, devoid of any humanity. They were like terrifying mannequins watching me. My blood ran cold all over again. I tried to speak, but the duct tape still covered my mouth. I could only manage a choked whimper. One of them, the tallest one who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward. He did not speak. He just stared at me, his dark eye slits unreadable. Then he slowly reached out a gloved hand and, with a deliberate, agonizingly slow motion, peeled the duct tape from my mouth. The sound was sharp, painful, tearing at my skin. My lips were raw. My tongue felt thick. Who are you? I croaked, my voice hoarse with fear. What do you want? The masked man did not answer. He just tilted his head slightly, as if considering my words, or perhaps just observing me. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the incessant drip of water somewhere in the room. Finally, another one, shorter and stockier, stepped forward. He held something in his hand, a small black device. He pressed a button and a low, distorted voice crackled from it. Alex, the voice said, tinny and artificial, devoid of emotion. You have been chosen. Chosen? For what? My mind raced, trying to make sense of this surreal nightmare. Chosen for what? I demanded, my voice trembling despite my efforts to keep it steady. I do not understand. I do not have any money. I am just a regular guy. The taller one stepped forward again, holding up a small laminated photo. It was a picture of me, a picture taken recently, walking out of my apartment building. My stomach lurched. They had been watching me. You are not chosen for money. The distorted voice continued from the device. You are chosen for a game. A game. My blood ran cold. This was even worse than ransom. This was personal. This was twisted. What kind of game? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The short one put the device away. And then the tall one, the leader, finally spoke. His voice was deep, gravelly, and completely devoid of inflection, as if he had not spoken in years. It was chilling. The game of the lost soul. He rumbled. A test of will. A journey through the self. My mind reeled. This was not some street gang. This was something cultish, something deeply unsettling. I do not want to play your game. I yelled, struggling against my restraints. Let me go. You have the wrong guy. He simply stared at me, unblinking. Then, he turned to one of the other masked men and gestured toward the door in the far corner of the basement. The masked man nodded, then disappeared through it. A few moments later, he returned, pushing a wheeled cart. On the cart were several items, each more bizarre and unsettling than the last. There was an old, rusted metal bucket, a coil of thick rope, a small, worn leather-bound book, and a single, flickering candle in a brass holder. But what truly caught my eye, what made my blood turn to ice, was a small, crudely carved wooden doll, its eyes empty, its limbs disproportionate. It looked eerily like a miniature, distorted version of me. The leader picked up the wooden doll. He held it up, examining it. This is you. Alex, he said, his voice still that chilling monotone. And this, he added, picking up a long, thin needle from the cart, is your path. He slowly, deliberately, pushed the needle into the doll's chest. A sharp, phantom pain shot through my own chest. I gasped, clutching at my shirt, my eyes wide with terror. It was psychological. I told myself, it had to be, but the fear was real. The game begins now, the leader announced. You will answer our questions. You will follow our instructions. You will face your fears. If you succeed, you will be free. If you fail, your soul will be lost. The other two masked men stepped forward, one on either side of me. The short one held up a small, black cloth bag. First question. Alex, the distorted voice from the device crackled again. What is your greatest regret? My mind raced. My greatest regret. What did that have to do with anything? I stammered, unsure what to say. I do not know. I guess not telling someone I loved them before it was too late. The masked men exchanged glances. The leader nodded slowly. Acceptable, the device said. Now, for the next stage. The short one reached into black bag and pulled something out. He held it up. It was a small, dead bird, its eyes glazed over, its feathers ruffled. My stomach churned. You will consume this, the device commanded. A symbol of rebirth, of overcoming. My eyes widened in horror. No, no way. I can't do that. I gagged, turning my head away. The leader stepped closer, his masked face inches from mine. You will, he said, his voice a low growl, or the game ends here. And you lose. The other two grabbed my head, forcing it straight. The short one brought the bird closer to my face. The smell was putrid. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking my head violently, but they held me firm. I felt the cold, clammy feathers against my lips, then the horrifying sensation of them trying to force the bird into my mouth. I fought with every fiber of my being, thrashing, kicking, screaming, a muffled, desperate sound. I could not do it. I absolutely could not. I heard a sharp crack, and suddenly, my left arm flared with excruciating pain. One of them had twisted it. Hard. I cried out a raw, animal sound. This is not a suggestion. Alex, the leader's voice was like ice. This is a command. Tears streamed down my face. My body was shaking uncontrollably. I was trapped, utterly at their mercy. The pain in my arm was unbearable, a searing agony that made me lightheaded. I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that they would break me. They would make me do it. Just as the bird was about to enter my mouth, a loud, piercing alarm suddenly blared through the basement. A harsh, red light began flashing erratically from a corner of the room. The masked men froze. Intruder, the distorted voice in the device shrieked, now sounding frantic. Perimeter breach. Chaos erupted. The masked men, who moments before had been so calm and methodical, were now moving with frantic urgency. The bird was dropped, splattering on the concrete floor. The leader barked orders in a language I did not understand, sharp, guttural words. They seemed to forget all about me. This was my chance. With a surge of adrenaline, I pulled and twisted against the zip ties on my wrists, ignoring the searing pain in my dislocated arm. The plastic dug into my flesh, but I did not care. The alarm continued to blare, disorienting them, giving me a precious few seconds. I kicked out with my bound feet, knocking over the cart with the doll and the candle. The candle rolled, its flame flickering precariously. One of the masked men glanced at me, then back at the door from where the alarm seemed to be emanating. Their priority was clearly the intruder. They did not even bother to secure me. I pulled again, harder this time, gritting my teeth. The zip ties were cheap, thin plastic. With a final, desperate wrench, one of them snapped. My hand was free, raw and bleeding, but free. I immediately worked on the other wrist, my fingers clumsy with pain and haste. The second one gave way. Freeing my hands, I quickly untied my ankles. My legs were stiff, but I forced myself to move. The masked men were still focused on the door, their backs mostly to me. The leader was yelling into a walkie-talkie, his voice agitated. I scrambled off the chair, my dislocated arm hanging uselessly, sending waves of agony through me. I bit back a cry. I had to get out. I scanned the room, looking for an exit, any way out. The door the masked man had used earlier, the one he had gone through to get the cart, seemed like my best bet. I moved silently, trying to stay in the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. The red flashing light cast grotesque shadows, making everything seem distorted and nightmarish. I reached the door, fumbling with the cold metal handle. It was stiff, but it turned. I pulled it open quietly and slipped through, closing it gently behind me. I was in a narrow, dimly lit hallway. The alarm was still blaring, muffled now, but still loud enough to make my head pound. I could hear the masked men's voices, growing fainter, still focused on the intruder in the basement. I moved quickly, my bare feet slapping against the cold floor. The hallway led to a flight of rickety wooden stairs. I climbed them as fast as my aching body would allow, each step a gamble. At the top, another door. I pushed it open. I was in a kitchen, an old, rustic kitchen with a wood-burning stove and a worn wooden table. It looked like something out of a cabin in the woods. The window above the sink showed complete darkness outside. It was still night. I did not hesitate. I dashed to the back door, fumbling with the deadbolt. It was stiff, rusted. My fingers trembled, my dislocated arm screaming in protest. I heard footsteps behind me, faint but growing louder. They were coming. With a desperate cry of frustration, I finally got the bolt to slide. I yanked the door open and burst out into the cold night air. I was in a small, overgrown backyard. Beyond it, dense woods. The alarm from the basement was barely audible now, replaced by the sound of the night crickets, rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and then the unmistakable sound of shouting from inside the cabin. I did not look back. I ran. I ran blindly into the woods, crashing through bushes, tripping over roots, my lungs burning, my dislocated arm swinging wildly, sending fresh jolts of agony through me with every stride. The darkness was absolute, relieved only by the faint glow of the moon filtering through the thick canopy of trees. I could hear them behind me now, their heavy footsteps, the rustle of leaves, their angry shouts. They were pursuing me. Fear, raw and primal, propelled me forward. I did not know where I was going, just that I had to get away. I stumbled, fell, scraped my knees and hands, but I forced myself back up, pushing through the pain, the exhaustion, the sheer terror. At some point, I heard a dog bark, far off in the distance, a beacon of hope, a sign of civilization. I started running towards the sound, ignoring the thorns tear at my clothes, the branches whipping at my face. After what felt like an eternity, I burst out of the tree line and onto a narrow, unpaved road. It was deserted, but in the distance, I could see a faint glow of lights. A house. I ran towards it, screaming for help, my voice raw and ragged. My legs felt like lead, my entire body was screaming in protest, but I could not stop. I could still hear them, their shouts growing fainter, but still there, a terrifying reminder of what I was running from. I finally reached the house, a small, unassuming farmhouse. I hammered on the door, yelling, "Help me! Please, help me!" A light flickered on inside, then the porch light. The door opened slowly, revealing an elderly woman, her face etched with concern, holding a shotgun. Her eyes widened when she saw me disheveled, bleeding, one arm dangling at an unnatural angle, shaking uncontrollably. "My God, son," she exclaimed, lowering the shotgun slightly. "What happened to you?" I collapsed onto her porch, gasping for breath, unable to form coherent words. They masked men game, they tried to. She helped me inside, her movement surprisingly strong for her age. She had me sit down, immediately calling 911. While she waited for the police, she tried to get some answers out of me, but my mind was still reeling, trying to process the nightmare I had just lived through. The police arrived about 20 minutes later. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, casting eerie shadows on the farmhouse walls. I recounted my story as best as I could to the officers. The online date, Sarah, the fake bistro, the masked men, the abduction, the basement, the twisted game, the dead bird, the alarm, my escape. They listened patiently, their faces grim. They took notes. They sent a couple of officers to investigate the area I described, the old barn, the cabin in the woods. They found nothing. No masked man. No evidence of a struggle. No gilded spoon. Just an empty, dilapidated barn and an old, abandoned cabin. It was like it had all vanished. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and overwhelming paranoia. My arm was dislocated and badly bruised, but otherwise, I was physically okay. Mentally, that was a whole different story. The police tried their best, but without any physical evidence, without a clear crime scene, and with my story sounding like something out of a bad horror movie, their hands were tied. They ran Sarah's profile, but it was deleted shortly after my escape. The phone number she used was a burner, untraceable. It was like she and they had simply, "Hey everyone, Alex here. Before I dive into today's story, just a quick heads up, this one is not connected to my personal nightmare from a few years back. The one with the game of the lost soul. That experience, as terrifying as it was, left me with a particular kind of scar, a lingering paranoia about strangers and the dark corners of the internet. But the story I am about to tell you, it is about a different kind of horror, one that many of us flirt with every day without even realizing it. It is about the vulnerability we expose ourselves to in the digital age, and how quickly a search for connection can turn into a living nightmare. This story was shared with me by a woman named Chloe. She reached out after hearing my own experiences, saying my words resonated with a terror she would face herself. She wanted her story told, hoping it might serve as a warning. And trust me, after hearing it, I think you'll understand why. So, picture this was a few years ago, before the world went completely sideways. Chloe, like a lot of people her age, was on Tinder. She was in her late 20s, living alone in a cute, but not particularly secure apartment on the outskirts of a mid-sized city. She worked a pretty standard 9-to-5 job, and honestly, she was just looking for someone nice, someone to share a laugh with, maybe a quiet dinner. Nothing too dramatic. She would have been on a few duds. You know how it goes. Guys who look nothing like their photos. Guys who only want to talk about crypto. Guys who thought a first date was a perfect time to vent about their exes. So, when she matched with Mark, she felt a little flicker of hope. Mark's profile was good. Really good. He had a friendly, open smile, photos of him hiking with a dog, playing guitar, and one of them looking genuinely engaged in what looked like a volunteer project. His bio was witty, self-deprecating, and he seemed to have a stable job as a graphic designer. He was exactly the kind of guy Chloe was hoping to find. Their initial chats were great. Easy, flowing conversation. He asked thoughtful questions, actually listened to her answers, and had a dry sense of humor that made her genuinely laugh. They talked about everything from their favorite obscure indie bands to their shared love for bad reality TV. After about a week of texting, Mark suggested they grab a drink. Chloe, feeling a genuine connection and a rare sense of optimism, readily agreed. They decided on a local brew pub, a place that was usually pretty busy but had a relaxed atmosphere. Chloe got there a few minutes early, heart doing that little fluttery thing it does when you are both excited and a tiny bit nervous. Mark arrived right on time, looking even better in person than in his photos. He was taller than she expected, with kind eyes and a warm smile that reached them. The date started off perfectly. They ordered drinks, talked about their day, and the conversation picked up right where their text had left off. Chloe felt a level of comfort she rarely experienced on a first date. Mark was engaging, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. They talked about their childhoods, their aspirations, their pet peeves. He even managed to make her laugh so hard that a little bit of her cider came out her nose a moment that, in any other circumstance, would have been endearing. About an hour into the date, Mark was telling a story about a particularly frustrating client project. He wanted to show her an example of the kind of ridiculous feedback he would receive, something that highlighted the client's lack of understanding. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and unlocked it. He held it up, orienting it towards her, so she could see the email he was scrolling through. As he did, for just a fleeting second, her eyes caught something else on the screen. Not the email, not the app icons, but his phone's wallpaper. And that is when her world tilted on its axis. It was a photo of her, sleeping, in her bed, her breath hitched. Her heart, which moments before had been doing a happy little flutter, slammed into her ribs with the force of a battering ram. The image was unmistakable. It was her bedroom, the soft blue duvet, the specific pattern on her pillowcases, the way her hair fanned out across them. It was undeniably her, curled on her side, completely oblivious, completely vulnerable. The lighting in the photo was dim, the kind of pale gray light that filters in through thin curtains just before dawn. It was a perfect, crystal clear shot. The entire interaction lasted maybe 2 seconds. Mark quickly navigated to the email, oblivious, or so it seemed, to the horror that had just flashed across Chloe's face. He started explaining the client's comments, but his words were just a buzzing noise in her ears. All she could hear was the blood rushing through her own head, a frantic, deafening roar. Panic, cold and absolute, seized her. Her hands started to tremble, and she gripped her glass so tightly she thought it might shatter. How in God's name did he have that photo? When? Where? She forced herself to breathe, shallow, ragged breaths that felt like shards of glass in her throat. She had to act normal. She had to. If he noticed a reaction, if he saw the pure terror in her eyes, what would he do? The thought alone made her stomach churn. Wow. She managed to croak out, forcing a weak smile. That is truly awful feedback. Her voice sounded alien, thin and reedy, but Mark just nodded, still engrossed in his explanation. She needed to get out. Now. Her mind raced, trying to concoct a plausible excuse. You know what? Mark, she interrupted, trying to keep her voice steady. I am so sorry, but I just remembered I have this super early morning meeting tomorrow. It completely slipped my mind. I really should head home and get some sleep. It was a flimsy excuse. She knew it. It was barely 8 p.m., and they would only had one drink. But it was all she could come up with on the fly. She tried to make eye contact, to appear apologetic, but her gaze kept darting to his phone, which he would now place face down on the table. Mark looked a little disappointed, but not suspicious. Oh, really? That is a shame. I was having such a good time. He smiled, that same warm smile, and for a terrifying moment, Chloe wondered if it was all an act. Was he enjoying this? The thought made her skin crawl. Me too, she chirped, perhaps a little too enthusiastically. Honestly, this has been one of the best first dates I have had in ages. We should definitely do it again soon. The words felt like a betrayal, a lie that tasted like ash in her mouth, but she needed to maintain the facade. She needed to escape without alarming him. Absolutely, he said, and Chloe felt a fresh wave of dread wash over her. He was going to expect a second date. He was going to expect to see her again. She fumbled for her purse, pulling out her wallet. Let me just split this. No. It is on me, he insisted, already signaling for the waiter. My treat. The gesture, once charming, now felt like a trap. A way to prolong her stay, to keep her tethered to him for a few more minutes. She forced another smile. You are too kind. Thank you. Mark. Really? As the waiter brought the check. Chloe stood up. Well, I really do need to run. It was great meeting you. She practically bolted from the table, not even waiting for him to finish paying. She mumbled a quick goodbye, a vague promise to text him, and then she was out the door, into the cool night air. She did not run, not exactly. She walked fast, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, her hands clammy. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist. Every car that passed felt like it was slowing down. Every person she saw on the street felt like they were watching her. She pulled out her phone, pretending to be engrossed in a text, but really she was just trying to keep her hands from shaking. She called a ride share, her finger fumbling on the screen. When the car finally pulled up, she practically leaped into the back seat, giving the driver her address in a breathless rush. As the car pulled away, she risked a glance back at the brew pub. Mark was standing outside, his phone to his ear, looking directly at the spot where she had just been. Her blood ran cold. The ride home was a blur of hyper-awareness. Every turn, every stop, every flicker of headlights in the rear-view mirror sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through her. She kept checking her reflection in the window, half expecting to see his face, his eyes, staring back at her from the darkness outside. When the car finally pulled up to her apartment building, she fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped them. She practically sprinted up the 2 flights of stairs to her front door, fumbling with the lock. The click of the deadbolt engaging was the sweetest sound she would ever heard. But even with the door locked, she did not feel safe. Not really. She leaned against the door, gasping for breath, trying to calm the frantic hammering of her heart. The image of the wallpaper flashed in her mind again, her, sleeping, utterly vulnerable. How? How did he get that picture? Her apartment suddenly felt like a glass cage, every window a potential entry point, every shadow a hiding place. She moved through her living room like a ghost, switching on every light, pushing aside curtains to peer out into the night. Nothing, just the familiar streetlights, the distant hum of traffic. She went straight to her bedroom, the scene of the crime in that terrifying photo. She looked at her bed, her duvet, her pillowcases. Everything was exactly as she would left it that morning. But now it felt violated, tainted. The comfort of her own space had been utterly shattered. She started checking everything. The windows. Were they locked? Yes, all locked, or so she thought. She double-checked each latch, pushing them firmly into place. The fire escape window, which she rarely opened, was also securely fastened. Her front door, the deadbolt and the chain, both engaged. How could he have gotten in? Or, more chillingly, how could he have taken a photo without getting in? She lived on the second floor. It would be difficult, but not impossible, to climb up to her window. But then, how would he have gotten such a clear shot from outside? The angle in the photo, the way it was framed, it looked like it was taken from inside her room, standing right beside her bed. A new, horrifying thought struck her. What if he had been in her apartment while she was sleeping? The idea sent a fresh wave of nausea through her. She ran to her closet, pulling out a small, blunt pair of scissors. It was not much, but it was all she had. She clutched them tightly, her knuckles white. She systematically went through her apartment. The bathroom, the kitchen, the small storage closet. Nothing seemed out of place. No signs of forced entry. No strange smells. No lingering presence. But the absence of evidence did little to soothe her growing dread. In fact, it only made it worse. It meant he was good, or that she was missing something. She remembered the feeling of being watched, that subtle prickle on the back of her neck that she would sometimes dismiss as paranoia. Had it been real? Had he been there, just outside her window or even inside her apartment, lurking in the shadows, watching her sleep? The thought was unbearable. Her mind raced back over her interactions with Mark. Had he ever asked anything too specific? Had he ever hinted at knowing things he should not? She could not recall anything overt, nothing that stood out as a red flag at the time. But now, every seemingly innocuous comment took on a sinister new meaning. He would ask about her work schedule, her weekends. He would mention that he liked her cozy apartment when she would post a picture of her new bookshelf on Instagram, but that picture had not shown her bed or anything that would indicate her sleeping arrangements. He would make a casual joke about her being a heavy sleeper once, after she would mention missing an early morning alarm. At the time, she would just laugh it off. Now, it felt like a chilling confirmation. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers trembling as she typed Mark Tinder into the search bar. She found his LinkedIn profile, confirming his job as a graphic designer. His IU-Tubi was private, but she could see his profile picture the same friendly smile. She tried to find mutual friends, any connection, but there was nothing. He was a complete stranger, yet he had a photo of her sleeping in her own bed. She frantically checked her own social media privacy settings. Everything was set to friends only or private. She rarely posted anything about her apartment's interior, and certainly nothing that would give away the layout of her bedroom or her sleeping habits. She was careful, she thought. She was careful. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She nearly dropped it, her heart leaping into her throat. It was a text from Mark. "Hey, it was really great meeting you tonight. Chloe, hope your meeting goes well tomorrow. Let me know when you are free again." The message, which would have been perfectly normal just a few hours ago, now sent a shiver of pure terror down her spine. He was still acting normal, still pretending. It was like he was playing a game, and she was the unwitting pawn. She did not reply. She could not. She just stared at the message, her mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Sleep was impossible. She spent the entire night huddled on her couch, the scissors clutched in her hand, every creak of the building, every distant siren, sending her into a fresh state of alert. She kept imagining his face, that friendly smile, morphing into something predatory, something evil. She pictured him outside, watching her window, knowing she was awake, knowing she was terrified. The next morning, exhausted and emotionally drained, Chloe called her best friend, Sarah. She recounted the entire story, her voice trembling as she described the wallpaper. Sarah, usually so practical and level-headed, was horrified. Chloe, that is absolutely insane. You need to go to the police. Chloe hesitated. What would I even tell them? My Tinder date had a picture of me sleeping as his wallpaper. They would think I was crazy or just overreacting. I do not have any proof. He did not threaten me. He did not do anything illegal on the date. But he did take a photo of you sleeping in your bed. Sarah insisted. That is definitely illegal, or at least incredibly creepy and disturbing. He clearly stalked you. You need to report him. Chloe, at the very least, they can check his background, see if he has a history. Reluctantly, Chloe agreed. She knew Sarah was right. She had to do something. She spent an agonizing hour at the police station, trying to explain the situation to a skeptical-looking officer. He listened patiently, taking notes, but Chloe could see the doubt in his eyes. Without any physical evidence, without a direct threat, it was just her word against a dating app match. They advised her to block him, change her locks, and be vigilant. They said they would look into it. But it felt like a brush-off. No one seemed to grasp the sheer, gut-wrenching terror of seeing that photo. Feeling even more alone and helpless, Chloe went home. She immediately blocked Mark on Tinder and on her phone. She changed her social media passwords and tightened her privacy settings even further. She even went to a hardware store and bought a few extra door wedges and a window alarm. But the paranoia did not go away. If anything, it intensified. Every time she came home, she felt a prickle on the back of her neck, a sense of being watched. She started checking under her bed, inside her closet, before she went to sleep. She kept the scissors, and now a heavy flashlight, beside her bed. A few days later, things started getting weirder. She came home from work one evening and noticed something was off. Her blinds, which she always left slightly open, were completely closed. She distinctly remembered leaving them open to let in some light. A chill ran down her spine. Had she just forgotten? Or had someone been in her apartment? She checked her locks again. Still secure. No signs of forced entry. She dismissed it as her paranoia, a trick of her exhausted mind. The next morning, she found a small, perfectly folded paper crane on her kitchen counter. She lived alone. She had not made a paper crane. Her hands started shaking uncontrollably. This was not paranoia. This was real. Someone had been in her apartment, and they had left a calling card. She frantically searched her apartment again, this time with a desperate intensity. She found nothing else. No note, no other objects. Just a silent, ominous paper crane. Her mind immediately went to Mark. It had to be him. But how was he getting in? And why was he leaving these bizarre, non-threatening tokens? Was it a game? A twisted way of showing her he could get to her anytime. She called the police again, her voice shaking with fear. They sent an officer, who again found no signs of forced entry. He suggested she might have left a window open, or that a friend might have played a prank. A friend. Who would play such a cruel joke, especially after she had told Sarah everything? The officer took the paper crane as evidence, but Chloe could tell he still was not taking her seriously. That night, Chloe did not sleep in her apartment. She packed a small bag and drove to Sarah's place, explaining everything: the paper crane, the closed blinds. Sarah, seeing the genuine terror in Chloe's eyes, did not hesitate. You are staying here as long as you need to. But even at Sarah's, Chloe could not shake the feeling of being watched. She kept checking windows, jumping at every shadow. She felt like a hunted animal, constantly looking over her shoulder. A week passed. Chloe was still at Sarah's. She would manage to get a locksmith to change her apartment locks, and she was even considering breaking her lease and moving. But then, an even more terrifying incident occurred. Sarah's apartment building had a small, shared laundry room in the basement. Chloe went down one evening to do a load of clothes. It was late, and the laundry room was empty, the fluorescent lights humming eerily. She loaded her clothes into a machine, then sat down on a plastic chair to wait. As she scrolled through her phone, she heard a faint scratching sound coming from the far corner of the room near the old utility sink. She froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She slowly looked up, her eyes scanning the dimly lit space. Nothing, just shadows. She tried to tell herself it was just the building settling or a mouse. But the sound came again, a distinct rhythmic scratching, like fingernails on concrete. She stood up, slowly, cautiously. Her gaze landed on a small, grimy window high up on the wall, almost at ceiling level. It looked out onto a narrow alleyway between Sarah's building and the next. And then she saw it. A hand. A man's hand, pressed against the grimy glass from the outside. And then, slowly, an eye appeared, peering through a small gap in the dirt. It was Mark. His eye, cold and unblinking, stared directly at her. Chloe screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore from her throat. She did not think. She just reacted. She grabbed a nearby laundry basket and hurled it at the window with all her might. The basket hit the glass with a dull thud, and the hand and eye vanished instantly. She did not wait. She bolted for the door, scrambling up the stairs, her screams echoing through the quiet building. She burst into Sarah's apartment, sobbing, barely able to explain what she was seeing. Sarah, horrified, immediately called the police. This time, with a direct sighting, a witness, and the fact that Mark had followed Chloe to a different location. They took it seriously. They sent patrol cars, checked the alleyway, but by the time they arrived, Mark was long gone. However, the police did find something. Tucked into a crevice in the brick wall beneath the laundry room window, they found a small Ziploc bag. Inside was another paper crane, identical to the one found in Chloe's apartment, and next to it, a small silver locket. The locket was old, tarnished. Chloe recognized it immediately. It had belonged to her grandmother. She had kept it in a small wooden box on her bedside table, a sentimental piece she rarely wore. Now she knew he had not just been in her apartment. He had been in her bedroom. He had not just taken a photo. He had taken a piece of her. The police launched a full investigation. They pulled Mark's phone records, traced his IP address, and put out an alert for him. They found out he lived a few towns over, and when they went to his apartment, he was gone. He had seemingly vanished, leaving behind an empty apartment and a trail of digital breadcrumbs that led nowhere. Chloe and Sarah were interviewed repeatedly. The police theorized that Mark had somehow gained access to her building, perhaps by tailing a resident, or maybe he had just gotten lucky with a broken lock. He must have slipped into her apartment while she was out, or even when she was home and distracted. The photo, the paper cranes, the locket, they were all part of his twisted game, a way to exert control and terrorize her without direct confrontation, until the laundry room incident. They never found Mark. Not officially. Anyway, his social media profiles went dark. His phone was disconnected. He simply disappeared. Chloe eventually moved. She broke her lease, packed up her life, and relocated to a different city, a different state even. She changed her phone number, deleted all her social media accounts, and tried to rebuild her life from scratch. But the experience left an indelible mark. She still struggles with trust, with feeling safe, especially in her own home. Every creak of the floorboards, every unfamiliar sound outside her window, sends a jolt of fear through her. She checks her locks obsessively, double-checks her windows, and still sometimes sleeps with a heavy flashlight by her bed. She no longer uses dating apps. The thought of putting herself out there, of inviting a stranger into her life, fills her with an overwhelming dread. She knows, deep down, that Mark is still out there somewhere. He is just a ghost now, a chilling reminder that the world is not always as safe as it seems. and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters were the most charming smiles. Chloe's story is a stark reminder of the hidden dangers lurking in the digital world, and how easily our search for connection can turn into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. It is a story that still gives me chills every time I think about it, a testament to the fact that true horror is not always about ghosts and ghouls, but about the very real, very human capacity for obsession and terror. Stay safe out there, everyone, and always, always trust your gut. Hey, everyone. Alex here. And man, do I have another story for you today. You know, after sharing Chloe's experience with Mark, the one where she saw her own sleeping face on his phone wallpaper, I got a lot of messages. A lot of people reaching out, sharing their own brushes with that specific kind of digital terror. It is a stark reminder, is not it, how much we put ourselves out there, how vulnerable we become, just looking for a connection. Chloe's story stuck with me, really haunted me. But it also made me realize something important. These are not isolated incidents. The digital world, it is a double-edged sword. It connects us, sure, but it also creates these dark alleys where predators can hide, where the line between curiosity and obsession blurs until it vanishes entirely. The story I am about to tell you, it is from a guy named Mike. He reached out to me a few weeks ago after hearing Chloe's account. He said it resonated with him in a way he could not quite explain, because while his experience did not involve a photo of him sleeping, it started with something equally innocent, equally mundane, and spiraled into a nightmare that changed his life forever. It is a story about a date, a seemingly harmless selfie, and the chilling realization that sometimes the most innocent gestures can be the most dangerous. So, grab a warm drink, turn down the lights, and let me tell you about Mike's date with Lila. Mike was, well, he was just a regular guy. Early 30s, lived in a decent apartment in a mid-sized city, worked a pretty standard office job. Like a lot of us, he had been trying his hand at online dating. It was a mixed bag, as it usually is. A few awkward coffee dates, some conversations that fizzled out, the usual parade of profiles that never quite lived up to their filtered expectations. He was, honestly, getting a little tired of it, but he kept swiping, kept hoping. You know how it is. We all want that connection, that spark. Then he matched with Lila. Her profile was intriguing. Not overly glam, not overtly sexualized. Just a series of natural-looking photos. One of her hiking. Another laughing with friends at what looked like a street fair, a close-up that showed off her vibrant, intelligent eyes. Her bio was witty, a little self-deprecating, and mentioned a love for indie films and trying new breweries. She seemed genuine. Their initial messages were great. Easy, flowing conversation. She asked thoughtful questions, actually read his profile, and responded with more than just one-word answers. Mike felt a genuine sense of optimism he had not experienced in a while. He suggested a local brew pub, a place he liked that had a good, relaxed atmosphere, not too fancy, not too loud. She readily agreed. The night of the date, Mike was a mix of nerves and excitement. He got there a little early, grabbed a table, and ordered a beer. A few minutes later, Lila walked in, and she was even more striking in person. Her smile was infectious, her eyes sparkled, and she had this confident, easygoing aura about her. The date, for the first hour or so, was fantastic. They talked about everything: their jobs, their hobbies, travel plans, even some of their more embarrassing dating app stories. Mike found himself genuinely laughing, feeling a connection that went beyond superficial small talk. Lila was intelligent, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. He felt a rare sense of comfort, like he could truly be himself. They were about halfway through their second round of drinks, the conversation drifting from a hilarious story about Mike's first attempt at cooking a gourmet meal to Lila's passion for rescuing old books. When it happened, Lila paused, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know what?" she said, pulling out her phone. "This has been such a great night. We should commemorate it. Let us take a funny selfie." Mike chuckled. "A funny selfie, huh? What is your go to funny face? She grinned. Oh, you will see. Come on, lean in. He leaned in, a little awkward but game. Lila held up her phone, her arm extended. Her screen was facing her, naturally, but he could see the general outline of the camera app. She was fiddling with something, probably a filter, he thought. She tilted the phone slightly, adjusted her grip. Okay, on 3, she said, her eyes fixed on the screen, then briefly on him, then back to the screen. 1, 2, 3. She made a goofy face, eyes wide, tongue slightly out of Mike. Caught up in the moment, mirrored it with a silly grin and a slight cross of his eyes. He heard the familiar click of the camera. Perfect, she exclaimed, laughing. Oh, that is definitely going into the archives. She quickly tapped a few more times on her screen, then put her phone face down on the table. All right, back to your disastrous cooking adventures. The moment passed. The conversation picked up right where it left off. Mike barely thought about the selfie again for the rest of the evening. He was too busy enjoying himself. They stayed for another hour, talking, laughing, and by the time they parted ways outside the brew pub, Mike felt a genuine buzz, a hopeful excitement. He walked home with a spring in his step, already thinking about their next date. He sent her a text when he got home, thanking her for a great night. She responded almost immediately, saying she had a wonderful time too, and that she would love to do it again. Mike fell asleep with a smile on his face. The first hint that something was off was not immediate. It was subtle, insidious, like a slow drip of water eroding a stone. A couple of days later, Mike was scrolling through Instagram, just minding his own business. He would posted a picture of his cat, Mittens, curled up in a sunbeam a couple of hours earlier. Totally innocuous. As he scrolled, he noticed a new like on an old post. Not just any old post, but a picture he would uploaded almost 2 years ago. It was a photo of his apartment building from the street, taken during a particularly beautiful sunset. He remembered taking it, thinking the brickwork looked nice in the golden hour light. The like was from Lila. He paused. 2 years ago. That was odd. He had not connected with her on Instagram. He had not even mentioned his handle. He went to her profile. It was private. He would only seen her Tinder pictures. How had she found his Instagram, let alone scroll back 2 years to like a picture of his apartment building? He tried to brush it off. Maybe she was just super good at internet sleuthing. Or maybe he would mention his Instagram handle in passing on Tinder and forgotten. He told himself it was just a coincidence, a weird quirk. But a tiny, almost imperceptible seed of unease had been planted. The next day, he walked to his favorite coffee shop, a small, independent place just a few blocks from his apartment. He went there every morning before work, ordered the same thing of black coffee and a plain bagel. It was his routine. As he waited in line, he glanced at his phone. He had a new message from Lila. Morning. Mike, hope you are having a good start to your day. Just thinking about our date. That brew pub had some great IPAs, did not it? Nothing overtly strange, right? But then a second message popped up. Oh, and I hope your coffee's strong today. You always strike me as a black coffee kind of guy. A chill ran down Mike's spine. Always strike me as a black coffee kind of guy. He would never mention his coffee habits to her. Not on Tinder, not during their date. He was certain of it. And she would message him just as he was standing in line at his coffee shop. He looked around the coffee shop, a knot tightening in his stomach. Was she here? He scanned the faces, the people hunched over laptops, the hurried commuters. No Lila. He felt ridiculous. He was being paranoid. It was just a guess, a lucky deduction on her part. Maybe he just looked like a black coffee drinker. He tried to rationalize it away, but the feeling of being watched, of being known in a way he had not consented to, began to fester. Later that week, he was at work, engrossed in a spreadsheet, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Lila. "Hey, Mike. Just drove past your office building. That red brick really stands out. Does not it? Made me think of you. Hope your afternoon is flying by." Mike froze. His office building was red brick, and it was a fairly distinctive building, old and architecturally unique for the area. But it was not on any main thoroughfare. You had to take a specific, slightly out-of-the-way street to drive past it. And why would she be driving past it anyway? He had not told her where he worked, only the general industry. His heart started to pound. This was not a coincidence anymore. This was deliberate. He did not respond. He could not. His mind was racing. How? How did she know all this? The Instagram post, the coffee, his office. It was too much. Then, the memory of the funny selfie flashed into his mind. Her phone, the way she would angled it, her intense focus on the screen, the quick taps after the picture was taken. He remembered seeing something, a flash of text on her screen, something about sharing location. He would dismiss it at the time, thinking it was just a notification or part of the photo editing interface. But now, a cold dread washed over him. He started frantically searching on his own phone, apps that send location with photos, covert location sharing. He found article after article about malicious apps, about features in popular messaging services that allowed live location sharing. He remembered how some apps could be set to automatically share location when a picture is taken and sent to a specific contact, or even just saved. What if, during that funny selfie, she had not just taken a picture? What if she would use that moment of distraction of his goofy grin to covertly activate a location sharing feature? She had his phone number from Tinder, so she could have easily shared it with him or with someone else without him even knowing. The selfie was just a cover. The perfect, innocent cover. He felt sick to his stomach. His apartment, his coffee shop, his office. All of it. She had not just guessed. She knew. She knew because that selfie, taken in a moment of carefree fun, had pinpointed his exact location. And from that initial pin, she could have easily tracked his patterns, figured out his routine. He tried to call a friend, Mark, but he was busy. Mike left a rambling voicemail, tried to explain his growing terror, the ridiculousness of it all. Mark called back later, sounding a little confused, tried to reassure him that it was probably just a weird crush, maybe a little overenthusiastic. "She is just really into you, dude." Mark had said, trying to be helpful. Mike hung up, feeling more alone than ever. The feeling of being watched intensified. It was not just a vague paranoia, anymore it was a constant, suffocating presence. Every time he left his apartment, he felt eyes on his back. Every time he looked out his window, he half expected to see her. He started taking different routes to work, changing his coffee shop, trying to break his routines. But it felt futile. She already knew. She had the blueprint of his life. One evening, he came home to find a small package on his doorstep. It was not Amazon, not any recognizable delivery service. Just a plain brown box, no return address. Only his name and apartment number handwritten on it in neat, elegant script. His heart hammered against his ribs. He picked it up gingerly, his mind screaming, "Do not open it." But morbid curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need for answers, compelled him. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a single, meticulously folded paper crane. Mike dropped the box. His blood ran cold. A paper crane. He remembered Chloe's story, the chilling detail of the paper crane's mark left in her apartment, in Sarah's basement. It was a signature, a calling card. But how? How could Lila know about Chloe's story? How could she know about the paper cranes? Or was it just a terrifying coincidence? He immediately called the police. He tried to explain everything: the selfie, the location pings, the coffee shop, the office, the paper crane. The officer on the phone listened patiently, but Mike could hear the skepticism in his voice. "Sir, it sounds like you had a bad date." A paper crane is not really evidence of anything. And dating apps, well, people get a little obsessive sometimes. Unless she has directly threatened you or physically harmed you, there is not much we can do. But she knows where I live, where I work. She left this on my doorstep. Mike pleaded, his voice rising with desperation. We can send a patrol car to swing by your building a few times. Keep an eye out, the officer conceded, his tone still dismissive. But without concrete proof, like a restraining order violation or direct threat, our hands are tied. Mike hung up, his hand shaking. He was on his own. He spent the rest of the night barricaded in his apartment. Every creak and groan of the old building sending jolts of terror through him. He could not sleep. He kept replaying the date, the selfie, searching for any other clue, any other moment he might have missed. The next morning, exhausted and jumpy, he decided he could not stay there. He packed a small bag, called Mark again, and explained the situation more coherently. Mark, hearing the raw fear in Mike's voice, finally took him seriously. Dude, that is messed up. Come stay at my place. You can crash on the couch for a bit. Mike gratefully accepted. He left his apartment, trying to look casual, trying not to scan every shadow, every parked car. He felt like a rat fleeing a sinking ship, but he knew he had to get out. Living at Mark's apartment offered a temporary reprieve from the constant anxiety, but it did not erase the fear. Every time his phone buzzed, Mike jumped. Every unfamiliar car that drove past Mark's building sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He was a prisoner of his own paranoia. He started doing his own investigating. He went back through his Tinder messages with Lila. He remembered her asking about his general neighborhood, but nothing specific enough to pinpoint his exact address. He checked his phone's location history, his social media settings. Everything seemed secure on his end. The only variable was that selfie. That damn selfie. One afternoon, a week after moving to Mark's, Mike was browsing an online forum dedicated to digital privacy. He was desperate for answers, for any explanation that made sense. He stumbled upon a thread discussing a new, insidious trend apps that could use facial recognition and geotagging from a single photo to not only identify a person, but also track their movements by cross-referencing public data, social media, and even satellite imagery. The article mentioned how a high-resolution photo, especially one taken in a distinctive location, could be used as a starting point. And then it clicked. The selfie. The funny filter. Lila's phone. She was not just sending his location to him or to a friend. She was using a sophisticated, possibly even custom-built application that took that single image, that single location, and fed it into a system that could then track his patterns, his routines, his entire life. The paper crane, it was not just a coincidence. It was a signal, a message from someone who was either connected to Chloe's stalker, or was the same type of stalker, using similar psychological tactics. The realization was bone-chilling. He felt a sudden, desperate urge to confront her, to scream at her, to demand answers. But he knew that was foolish. He was dealing with someone who was clearly unhinged, dangerous. He decided to try and set a trap, or at least gather undeniable proof. He knew Lila knew about his old coffee shop. He would have avoided it since the text message. But what if he went back, just once, and watched? He told Mark his plan. Mark was hesitant, urging caution, but Mike was determined. I can't live like this. Mark, I need to know. I need proof. The next morning, Mike went to his old coffee shop. He chose a table near the window, facing the street, but slightly obscured, hoping to blend in. He ordered his usual black coffee, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched the warm mug. He tried to look casual, scrolling on his phone, but his eyes were constantly darting, scanning, searching. Minutes turned into an hour. Nothing. He was starting to feel foolish again, the paranoia subsiding into a dull ache of disappointment. Maybe she had given up. Maybe she had moved on. Just as he was about to leave, His phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered, his voice a little shaky. "Hello." Silence on the other end. A faint rustling sound, like someone breathing quietly. "Hello," Mike repeated, his heart pounding. Then a voice. Lila's voice. Soft, almost a whisper, but clear as a bell. "You really should not be here." "Mike," she said, "this place, it is not safe for you anymore." Mike's blood ran cold. He looked up, frantically searching the street, the windows of the buildings across the way. He saw no one. How do you know I am here?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. Lila chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. "Oh, Mike, you make it so easy. You always have. You are predictable. And that is why I like you." The line went dead. Mike dropped his phone. He practically vaulted out of his seat, spilling his coffee. He ran out of the shop, his eyes wide with terror, scanning the street like a hunted animal. He saw nothing. No Lila, no car, just the usual morning commuters, oblivious to his nightmare. He ran all the way back to Mark's apartment, gasping for breath, tears of pure terror streaming down his face. He locked the door, double-checked it, and collapsed onto the couch, shaking uncontrollably. He called the police again, recounting the phone call, the direct threat, the chilling knowledge of his whereabouts. This time, they sounded a little more concerned. They sent an officer to take a statement. Mike showed them the paper crane, explained the connection to Chloe's story. The officer took notes, but still seemed hesitant. "We will open a file. Mr. Jensen, we will put out a notice, but without a physical sighting or a clear recorded threat, it is difficult to act." Mike felt utterly defeated. He was living a real-life horror movie, and the authorities were powerless or unwilling to help. The weeks that followed were a blur of fear and anxiety. Mike could not go back to his apartment. He could not go back to work. He was a ghost in his own life, hiding out at Mark's, barely leaving the apartment. He lived in a constant state of hypervigilance, jumping at every shadow, every unexpected sound. He tried to block Lila's number, block her on every platform he could think of, but the messages, though less frequent, still found their way to him. Sometimes it was a cryptic email from an unknown address, sometimes a message through a random social media platform he barely used, sometimes just a blank text from a burner number. Each one was a reminder that she was still out there, still watching, still knew where to find him. One night, a picture arrived on his phone. It was sent from an anonymous email address. He almost did not open it, but the morbid curiosity, the desperate need to understand, won out. It was a photo of him, sleeping, his breath hitched in his throat. It was taken from an angle directly above his bed. Not his old bed, in his old apartment. This was Mark's guest bed, the one he was currently sleeping in. The blanket was pulled up to his chin, his face peaceful in sleep. He screamed, a guttural, primal sound of pure terror. Mark rushed in, alarmed. Mike shoved the phone into his hands, pointing at the screen, unable to speak. Mark's face went white. How is this possible?" Mark whispered, his voice trembling. "She was in my apartment. She was here while you were sleeping." The realization hit Mike like a physical blow. The phone call at the coffee shop, the cryptic messages, the paper crane, it was all leading to this. She was not just tracking him from afar. She was closer, much, much closer. She had found him at Mark's. She had been inside Mark's apartment. They called the police again, their voices hoarse with fear. This time, with the photo as undeniable proof, the police took it seriously. They swarmed Mark's apartment, dusting for prints, searching for any sign of forced entry. They found nothing. No broken windows, no jimmied locks. It was as if she had simply walked in. The police advised Mike to leave the city, to change his identity. to disappear. They could not guarantee his safety. They could not find her. Lila had vanished. Her Tinder profile was gone. Her social media, if it ever truly existed beyond his initial match, was untraceable. She was a ghost, a phantom that had materialized from the digital ether, terrorized him, and then disappeared back into the shadows. That was over a year ago. Mike followed the police's advice. He moved to a new state, thousands of miles away. He changed his phone number, deleted all his social media accounts, and even considered legally changing his name. He got a new job, started a new life, a carefully constructed facade of normalcy. But the terror remains. He still can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time he sees a woman with vibrant, intelligent eyes, a cold dread washes over him. Every time a new, unknown number calls, his heart leaps into his throat. He checks his locks 3, 4, 5 times before he goes to bed. He has blackout curtains, and he never, ever opens them at night. He has tried therapy, tried to process the trauma, but some wounds just do not heal. The trust he once had, the carefree attitude towards sharing his life online, it is all gone, replaced by a gnawing paranoia, a constant awareness of the vulnerability we all share in this interconnected world. He knows she is still out there, and he knows that somewhere, sometime, she might decide to take another funny selfie. And this time, it might not be a photo of him sleeping. It might be something far, far worse. Chloe's story. Mike's story, they are not just cautionary tales. They are chilling reminders that in the digital age, privacy is an illusion, and the line between connection and obsession is thinner than we dare to imagine. So be careful out there, everyone. Be vigilant, because sometimes the scariest monsters are not hiding under your bed. They're just a swipe away. Outro music begins to fade in. Narrator's voice retains a serious, somber tone. And that, my friends, is Mike's story. A terrifying glimpse into the darkness that can lurk just beneath the surface of our everyday interactions. If you have had similar experiences, or if the story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, stay safe out there. I will be back soon with another tale from the shadows. Until then, sleep tight. Hey everyone, Emily here. I am not sure why I am telling this story, honestly. Maybe it is a way to finally get out, or maybe I just need anyone, to believe me. Because what happened, it still haunts my waking hours, and it definitely haunts my sleep. It all started, like so many modern horror stories do, with a dating app, Tinder. You know how it is. You are single, maybe a little lonely, and swiping through profiles feels like a low-stakes game. Most dates are duds, some are just okay. And every now and then, you meet someone who actually sparks a little interest. That is what I thought I found with Mark. He had a great profile outdoorsy, a few pictures with a cute dog, a charming smile. His bio was witty, not overly aggressive or cliche. We matched, and our initial conversations were easy. He seemed genuinely interested, not just looking for a hookup, which was a refreshing change. We talked about books, our favorite hiking trails, even our weirdest childhood memories. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world he wanted to talk to. It was intoxicating. I will admit, I was flattered. After about a week of texting and a few phone calls that lasted way longer than I expected, we decided to meet up. We picked a popular gastropub downtown, a place I knew well with plenty of people around. Safety first, right? I told my best friend, Chloe, where I was going and with whom, just in case. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting at a corner table, nursing a craft beer. He stood up when he saw me, and I remember thinking, wow, he is even better looking in person. Taller than I expected, with kind eyes and a smile that reached them. He had a slight stubble, which usually is not my thing, but on him, it just looked rugged. He was wearing a dark blue Henley shirt that really brought out the color of his eyes. The date was fantastic. Seriously, It was one of the best first dates I would ever had. We talked for hours, laughed until our stomachs hurt. He told me stories about his work as a freelance graphic designer, and I shared anecdotes about my job in marketing. He listened intently, asked follow-up questions, and made me feel completely at ease. There were no awkward silences, no forced conversations. It felt natural, like we would known each other for ages. We had a couple of drinks. I think I had 2 glasses of wine, maybe 3. He stuck to beer. Nothing excessive, just enough to loosen up and enjoy the evening. We shared an appetizer, then moved on to main courses. The atmosphere was lively, the food was good, and his company was even better. Around 10 p.m., the pub started to wind down a bit. We were still deep in conversation, and neither of us wanted the night to end. He suggested, "How about one more drink? There's a quieter bar just a few blocks from here, if you are up for it." I hesitated for a second. It was a weeknight, and I had work in the morning, but I was having such a good time, and he seemed so genuine. "Sure," I said, "just one." The new place was indeed quieter, more dimly lit, with plush velvet seats and a jazz band playing softly in the corner. It felt intimate, almost romantic. We found a small booth, and the conversation flowed just as easily as before. I ordered another glass of wine, and he got some kind of dark liquor on the rocks. It was there, in that dim, cozy corner, that I started to feel a little off. It was not a sudden thing, more like a gradual fuzziness. The jazz music seemed to get a little louder, then softer. His voice, which had been so clear and engaging, started to sound a bit distant. I remember him asking me about my family, where I grew up, and I tried to answer, but my words felt thick, like my tongue was not quite cooperating. I remember taking a sip of my wine, and it tasted different. A little metallic, maybe, or just my imagination. The last thing I clearly recall from that night is him reaching across the table, taking my hand, and saying something about how beautiful my eyes were. His touch was warm, but even then, a tiny, almost imperceptible shiver ran down my spine. It was too much, too fast, too intense. I tried to pull my hand back, but he held it gently, firmly, then everything just blurred. The next morning, I woke up in my own bed. The curtains were drawn, so the room was still dark. My head was pounding, a classic hangover. I groaned, tried to remember how I would gotten home. Taxi, probably. I must have paid for it myself. I vaguely recalled feeling very tired, almost like I would have been drugged. But no, that was silly. Just too much wine. I had to have been mistaken about the taste. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. It was 9:30 a.m. My alarm for work had been set for 7 o'clock a.m. I would overslept by 2.5 hours. Panic started to set in. I needed to call my boss, explain, get ready. As I pushed myself up, a sharp, stinging pain shot to my left forearm. I winced, rubbing the spot. It felt like a deep scratch. Did I fall last night? I wondered, trying to piece together the missing hours. I had not felt that drunk, but clearly, I would have been more gone than I thought. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, the room spinning slightly. I needed water and maybe some Advil. As I reached for my phone again, my gaze drifted down to my arm. And that is when I saw it. It was not a scratch, not a bruise, not even a cut from a clumsy fall. Etched into the skin of my forearm, just below the crook of my elbow, were words, not written in ink or marker. These were carved, like someone had taken a sharp object and meticulously, deliberately cut into my flesh. The letters were raised, red, and angry-looking, still slightly weeping a clear fluid. They were stark against my pale skin. 3 letters. M-I-N-E. The world tilted. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trying to escape its cage. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. This could not be real. This had to be a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by a terrible hangover. I reached out a trembling finger and touched the raw skin. It burned. It was real. A wave of nausea washed over me, stronger than any hangover. I scrambled to the bathroom, barely making it to the toilet before I violently emptied the contents of my stomach. My body convulsed, but my mind was fixated on those 3 letters. M-I-N-E. Who? How? And why? I splashed cold water on my face, trying to clear the fog from my brain. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were wide with terror, my face pale. I pulled up my sleeve again, staring at the horror on my arm. It was undeniable. Someone had done this to me, and the only person I would have been with was Mark. My memory was still a black hole after that last drink at the jazz bar. Had he brought me home? Had he done this? The thought sent a fresh wave of icy fear through me. He had seemed so charming, so kind. But beneath that veneer, had there been something dark, something predatory? I tried to call Chloe, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. When she finally answered, her voice groggy, I could only manage a choked whisper. Chloe, something happened. Something terrible. She was at my apartment within 20 minutes, looking worried sick. I showed her my arm, and her face went from concern to absolute horror. She gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Emily, who would do this? Mark. I managed to say, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. It has to be him. I do not remember anything after that last drink. We spent the next hour trying to piece things together. We checked my apartment. No signs of forced entry. My front door was locked. My window was secure. My purse was on the table, wallet inside, nothing missing. It was as if I would simply come home, gone to bed, and this had happened. But how? Chloe insisted we call the police. I was hesitant. What would I even tell them? I went on a Tinder date, got drunk, woke up with words carved on my arm, and I do not remember anything. They would probably just dismiss it as a self-inflicted wound or a drunken accident. But Chloe was firm. Emily, this is assault. This is a threat. You have to report it. So we called. 2 officers arrived, looking tired and skeptical. I showed them my arm, recounted the date, the fuzzy memory, everything. They took notes, asked a lot of questions. Did you consent to any physical contact? Did he touch you inappropriately? Did you invite him back to your place? Each question made me feel more humiliated, more violated. They examined my apartment, found nothing. They asked if I wanted to press charges for assault. But what proof did I have? No witnesses, no forensic evidence. Just a blank space in my memory and a terrifying message carved into my skin. They advised me to go to a hospital to get the wound checked out and to consider getting a toxicology report, though they admitted it was likely too late to find anything. They said they would look into Mark, but their tone made it clear they did not expect to find anything. They left me feeling exposed, vulnerable, and utterly alone. Chloe stayed with me for the rest of the day. We tried to find Mark's profile on Tinder. It was gone, completely deleted, like he would never existed. My text to him, which had been so frequent just hours before, now showed as undelivered. His number was disconnected. It was like he would vanish into thin air, leaving only this horrific mark behind. The hospital visit was equally dehumanizing. The doctor was kind enough, but the nurses looked at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. They cleaned the wound, gave me antibiotics, and told me it would scar permanently, a constant reminder. For days, I barely left my apartment. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every creak of the floorboards sent my heart racing. I jumped at every sound, checking my locks repeatedly. I felt like I was living in a horror movie, and I was the main character. The wound on my arm slowly started to heal, but the letters remained a raised, angry red. I wore long sleeves constantly, even when it was warm, terrified that someone would see it, ask about it, or worse, understand its meaning. Then the incident started. Small at first, almost imperceptible. I would come home from work, and my apartment would feel different. Not like anything was stolen, or even moved drastically. Just a faint scent that was not mine, or a cushion slightly askew on the couch in a way I did not remember leaving it. I would brush it off as my paranoia, or just my own forgetfulness. One morning, I found a single white rose on my doorstep. No note, no card, just a perfect dewy rose. It was beautiful, but it sent a chill down my spine. Mark had mentioned during our date that white roses were his favorite. I threw it out immediately, my hand shaking. A few days later, my coffee order at my usual cafe was waiting for me before I even got to counter. A large latte with oat milk and an extra shot. My exact order, which I had never mentioned to Mark. The barista just smiled and said, "It is on the house today. Someone already paid for it." When I asked who, she just shrugged. Regular customer. Said you would know. I practically ran out of there, leaving the latte untouched. The terror escalated. I started getting anonymous texts. Not words, just pictures. Pictures of me. Not from inside my apartment, thankfully, but from outside. Me walking to work. Me getting groceries. Me sitting on a park bench, reading. The photos were always taken from a distance, slightly grainy, but unmistakably me. The angles were unsettling, like someone was always just around the corner, watching. Each picture was a fresh stab of fear, a confirmation that he was out there, and he was always watching. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media accounts, even considered moving. But where would I go? How could I escape someone who seemed to know my every move, who could get into my building without a trace? I went back to the police, armed with the photos and the texts. They listened, but their hands were tied. Anonymous numbers. MS. Miller. No discernible threats. We can't act on just a feeling, or even these pictures, without a clear crime being committed. They suggested I get a restraining order, but against whom? A ghost. Chloe tried to help, staying with me some nights, setting up security cameras, but even that felt futile. The feeling of being watched was constant, a suffocating blanket of dread. One evening, I came home to find my front door unlocked. Not forced, open, just unlocked. I always double-locked it. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst. I stood there for a long moment, frozen, before slowly pushing the door open. The apartment was dark, silent. I flipped on the lights, my eyes darting around. Nothing seemed out of place. But then, I saw it. On my kitchen counter, next to my fruit bowl, was a small, intricately folded paper crane. It was not just a random origami. It was made from a page torn from my favorite book, a worn copy of Wuthering Heights that sat on my bedside table. My blood ran cold. This was not just a stalker. This was someone who had been inside my home while I was gone and had left a calling card. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in my living room with a kitchen knife in my hand, staring at the door, waiting for something, anything. But nothing happened. Only the oppressive silence, punctuated by the frantic beat of my own heart. The next day, I called my landlord, explained the situation, and told him I needed to break my lease. He was understanding, if a little confused. I started packing immediately, frantically. I booked a flight to another state, to stay with my sister for a while, hoping that distance would finally break the connection with my tormentor. As I was packing my last box, I found a small, unmarked USB drive tucked into the pocket of a coat I rarely wore. I had no idea where it came from. My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. It contained only one file, a video. I clicked play, my breath hitched in my throat. It was a recording, time-stamped the night of my date with Mark. The video was shaky, clearly taken by a phone and dimly lit. It showed me, passed out cold, on what looked like my own bed. And then a hand entered the frame. A man's hand. He was holding something small and metallic. A scalpel. My eyes widened in horror as I watched him, with chilling precision, slowly, deliberately, carve the letters M-I-N-E into my arm. My arm. My unconscious body did not even flinch. He worked with an unnerving calmness, like a surgeon. When he was done, he gently covered my arm with the sleeve of my pajamas, then leaned down and kissed my forehead. The camera then panned up, briefly showing his face in the dim light. It was Mark. His eyes, which had seemed so kind on our date, now held a disturbing, possessive glint. He whispered something, but the audio was too muffled to make out. Then the video ended. I ripped the USB drive from my laptop, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. He had not just drugged me and broken into my apartment. He had filmed it. He wanted me to know. He wanted me to watch what he had done, to understand his claim. The terror was no longer abstract. It was concrete, undeniable. He was not just watching me, he was playing a game, and I was his unwitting pawn. The paper crane, the white rose, the paid coffee, they were not just signs of stalking. They were markers, messages that I was his. I showed the video to Chloe, who was just as horrified as I was. We went back to the police, with a video this time. Finally, they took it seriously. An actual crime, undeniable proof. They traced the USB drive, looked for Mark's digital footprint, but it was like chasing a ghost. He had covered his tracks meticulously. The phone number was burner, his online presence a carefully constructed illusion. The police said they would issue a warrant, but that finding would be incredibly difficult. I still moved. I flew halfway across the country, to a city where no one knew me. I changed my name legally. I cut off all contact with my old life, even Chloe, for a while, out of fear that he might somehow trace her back to me. It was a drastic measure, but I felt like I had no choice. I had to disappear. It has been 2 years since then. 2 years of looking over my shoulder, of checking locks 3 times, of feeling a cold dread whenever a stranger looks at me for too long. The scar on my arm is still there, a pale, raised mind that will never fade. It is a constant, physical reminder the night I lost control, the night I became someone else's property. I have rebuilt my life here, in a new city under a new name. I have new friends, a new job, but the fear never truly goes away. Sometimes, I will be walking down the street and I will catch a glimpse of someone who looks vaguely like him, and my blood runs cold. I will hear a specific song or see a white rose, and the memories come flooding back, fresh and terrifying. I never found out why he did it. Was it some twisted delusion of love? A power trip? A fetish? I do not know, and part of me does not want to know. The not knowing is its own kind of torture, but the truth might be even worse. The police never found Mark. He is still out there, somewhere, and sometimes late at night when the city is quiet. I can almost feel his gaze on me, even from hundreds of miles away. It is a chilling thought that keeps me awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he is still looking for me, wondering if one day I will wake up and find another message, another sign, reminding me that I am and always will be his. It is a terrifying thought, and it is why I can never truly feel safe. Because the truth is, when someone marks you like that, when they carve their ownership into your very skin, you carry that mark and that fear with you forever. And sometimes, I still wonder if I ever truly escaped them at all. Hey everyone, it is me again. And before I dive into this next story, I just want to say, some experiences, they do not just leave scars on your skin. They carve themselves into your mind, changing the way you see the world, the way you trust people. And for me, this one, it completely shattered my perception of what a normal person is capable of. You know, when you're swiping through profiles on a dating app, you're looking for a connection, maybe a good story, definitely not a nightmare. Most of the time, It is just awkward small talk, a few laughs, and then you either click or you do not. But sometimes you match with someone who seems perfectly normal, perfectly charming, and they turn out to be something else. Something truly horrifying. This happened to me a few years back, when I was in my mid-20s. Let us call me Alex. I was living in a decent apartment in a pretty average-sized city, working a pretty average job, and honestly, just trying to navigate the whole dating scene like everyone else. I would have been on and off a few different apps, mostly just swiping idly while I watched TV or waited for my coffee to brew. One evening, I stumbled across Sarah's profile, and man, she was striking. Dark, wavy hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that seemed to hint at some kind of playful secret. Her bio was short, quirky, talking about her love for vintage finds and obscure art. She seemed cool, a little edgy, definitely my type. We matched, and our conversation flowed easily. She was witty, intelligent, and had this way of making even the most mundane topics sound interesting. After a few days of texting, we decided to meet up for a drink. Our first date was at a cozy, slightly dimly lit bar downtown. She showed up looking even better than her pictures, wearing a simple but stylish dress that just accentuated her figure. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. She had a fascinating perspective on art, history, even the weird stuff you find at flea markets. She told me she lived a bit outside the city, in an older neighborhood, and that she spent a lot of her free time restoring antique furniture or working on her collection. She was vague about what exactly she collected, but it sounded intriguing. There was a moment, though, a tiny flicker, that in hindsight should have been a red flag. We were talking about something lighthearted, and I made a joke, and she just stared at me for a beat too long, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. It was like a mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing something cold underneath. But then she laughed, a genuine, warm laugh, and the moment passed. I chalked it up to the dim lighting, or maybe I would just had one too many IPAs. By the end of the night, I was completely charmed. She was unlike anyone I would ever dated. As we were getting ready to leave, she looked at me, her blue eyes sparkling, and said, "Hey, I had a really great time. Alex, listen, I actually have some amazing craft beer at my place. A few rare bottles I picked up, and if you are interested, I could show you some of my latest finds from my collection. It is pretty unique." Now, I know what you are thinking. Going back to someone's place on a first date. Risky, right? But I was feeling good. We would have had a great connection. The conversation was flowing, and she seemed genuinely interested in continuing the night. Plus, the thought of seeing her unique collection piqued my curiosity. I figured, worst case, it is a quick drink, a look at some weird antique, and then I head home. So, like an idiot, I said yes. We walked to her car, a slightly older sedan but well maintained. The drive out of the city was quiet, just the hum of the engine, and some indie music playing softly on the radio. As we got further from the downtown core, the streetlights became sparser, the houses older and more spread out. We turned down a long, winding road, eventually pulling up to a house that was set back from the street, partially obscured by overgrown trees and bushes. It was not a dilapidated shack, but it definitely had an isolated feel. The paint on the exterior was peeling in places, and the porch light cast a weak, yellowish glow that barely cut through the darkness. A few broken fence posts leaned precariously in. The yard. "It is a fixer-upper," she said with a shrug, sensing my hesitation. "Got it cheap. Gives me plenty of space for my projects." She led the way up a creaky set of wooden steps to the front door, fumbling with a large, ornate iron key. The lock groaned as she turned it, and the door swung inward with a low, drawn-out whine. The air inside was immediately different. It was cool, even though it was a relatively warm night, and carried a faint, musty scent like old wood, damp earth, and something metallic, almost coppery. It was not overtly unpleasant, just heavy. "Make yourself at home," she said, gesturing vaguely into the dimly lit living room as she kicked off her shoes. I will just grab those beers from the fridge. I stepped inside, my eyes slowly adjusting to the gloom. The living room was large but sparsely furnished. An old, worn sofa sat against one wall, a coffee table in front of it. There were no curtains on the windows, just heavy, dark blinds pulled completely shut, blocking out any moonlight. The only light in the room came from a single standing lamp in the corner, casting long, dancing shadows. And then I saw them. They were everywhere, scattered throughout the living room, leaning against walls, some even stacked on top of each other. Cages, not small bird cages or dainty decorative pieces. These were large. Some were clearly animal cages, like what you would see for a large dog, or even a small farm animal made of thick, rusty metal bars. But others were different. Taller, wider, clearly human-sized. My stomach did a little flip. My brain, in that initial moment of shock, tried to rationalize it. Okay, Alex, she said she collects weird stuff, right? Maybe she is into some kind of industrial art or found objects. But then my eyes landed on the padlocks. Every single cage, from the smallest to the largest, was secured with a heavy-duty, industrial-grade padlock. Some were shiny and new. Others were old and rusted, but all of them were undeniably functional. They glinted in the dim light, catching the faint glow from the lamp like tiny, malevolent eyes. My heart started to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. This was not just quirky. This was unsettling. Sarah re-emerged from what I assumed was a kitchen, holding 2 bottles of craft beer. She handed one to me, her smile unwavering, those blue eyes still sparkling. "So, what do you think of my decor?" she asked, gesturing around the room with her bottle. Her tone was light, almost playful, as if she were showing off a new painting. I took a sip of the beer, trying to steady my voice. It tasted good, cold and crisp, but my mouth felt dry. Wow. Sarah, that is quite a collection. What exactly are these for? I tried to keep my tone casual, but I could feel a tremor in my voice. She laughed, a low, throaty sound that seemed to echo in the cavernous room. "Oh, these... Yeah, they are for my projects. I told you, I am into upcycling. Found them at an old farm auction, a few at estate sales. Some of them are just so beautifully crafted. You know, like this one," she said, walking over to one of the larger, human-sized cages, running her hand along the rusty bars. "Look at the craftsmanship here. They do not make M like this anymore." She tapped the padlock with her fingernail. The sound was a dull, metallic clink that sent a shiver down my spine. And these padlocks fascinating. Each one tells a story. Do not you think? My mind was racing. Projects. Upcycling. What kind of project involved human-sized cages with industrial padlocks? I wanted to ask, but the words caught in my throat. I tried to force a smile. "Yeah, I guess so. They are definitely unique." I took another long swig of beer, trying to look around without being too obvious. The air still had that strange metallic tang. And beneath it, a faint, almost imperceptible smell of something organic. Like old dry blood, or maybe just really old, damp earth. I told myself it was just my imagination, fueled by the weird environment. "So, what kind of projects do you do with them?" I asked, trying to sound genuinely curious, not terrified. She turned to me, her smile a little too wide now, a little too fixed. "Oh, she said, her voice dropping slightly, various things. "Sometimes I just like to appreciate their form, their function, the way they hold things in." She paused, her gaze lingering on me for a moment, the way they contain. A bead of sweat trickled down my back. My gut was screaming at me now. Every fiber of my being was on high alert. This was not just eccentric. This was deeply, fundamentally wrong. You know what? I said, trying to force a casual tone. This beer is great, but I just remembered I have an early start tomorrow. I should probably head out soon. Sarah's smile did not falter, but her eyes went cold. The warmth vanished, replaced by something flat, something predatory. Oh, already. But we just got started. Alex, I thought you wanted to see my real collection. My blood ran cold. The way she emphasized real sent a jolt of pure terror through me. I stood up, trying to appear calm, but my legs felt like jelly. Yeah, no, I really do need to go. It was a great date. Sarah, really, I had a lot of fun. I started inching toward the front door. She did not move from by the cage. She just watched me, that chilling, fixed smile still on her face. You know, Alex, it is funny. Most people, they just see the cages. They do not appreciate the art of it, the way they can be used. I was at the door now, my hand reaching for the doorknob. It was cold, metallic, and felt suspiciously heavy. I twisted it. It did not budge. My heart leaped into my throat. I twisted harder, pulling, pushing. Nothing. It was locked, and from the feel of it, probably bolted from the inside. Looking for something. Alex, Sarah's voice, now devoid of any pretense of charm, cut through the silence. It was low, calm, and utterly terrifying. I spun around. She was still by the cage, but now she was holding something in her hand. It was a heavy, ornate brass key, glinting in the dim light. The key to the front door. The lock's a bit stiff, she said, her voice dripping with mock concern. I usually have to use this. She jingled the key, the sound a cruel mockery of a friendly gesture. My mind went into overdrive. Panic, pure and unadulterated, began to set in. I looked around the room, desperate. The blinds were drawn tight, probably nailed shut. The windows were old, but they looked sturdy. There was no way out through them. Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Try to appeal to whatever shred of humanity might be left in her. What is this? Let me go, please. She took a slow, deliberate step towards me, then another. Her eyes were fixed on me, like a predator sizing up its prey. Let you go. Alex, honey, we are just getting to the good part. You have not even seen my favorite pieces yet. And that is when I heard it. A faint sound, barely audible above the pounding in my ears. A soft, desperate whimper. It came from one of the larger, human-sized cages in the corner of the room, partially obscured by shadow. My eyes darted to it, and through the rusty bars, in a tiny sliver of light, I saw it. A hand, gaunt, pale, fingers curled around a bar, trembling. And then an eye, wide, terrified, staring out at me from the darkness within. A human eye. The metallic smell in the air suddenly made horrifying sense. My blood ran cold. My stomach dropped like a stone. These were not for animals. These were not for upcycling. These were for people. And there was someone in there right now. Oh, you found my little secret. Sarah purred, her voice now a chilling whisper as she closed the distance between us. She was no longer smiling. Her face was a mask of cold, calculating intent. He has been a bit restless tonight. I think he misses company. I did not wait. I did not think. Adrenaline surged through me. I bolted, not towards a door, but deeper into the house, looking for another exit. I burst through an archway into what looked like a dining room. More cages, some empty, some partially covered with tarps, but the air in here was even heavier, thicker with that awful organic scent. Running won't help. Alex, Sarah's voice echoed behind me, closer than I expected. This house is very good at keeping things in. I frantically tried the back door in the dining room. Locked, bolted, chains wrapped around it. I slammed my shoulder against it, but it was solid. Panic was a suffocating blanket. I was trapped. I could hear her footsteps behind me, calm and measured. I glanced back. She was standing in the doorway, a small, cruel smile now playing on her lips. In her hand, she now held something else. A taser. The small, electric hum was unmistakable, a terrifying prelude to pain. "I really like you, Alex," she said, her voice almost conversational. "You are smart. You are curious. And you have such nice, strong arms. I think you will be a wonderful addition to my collection." "No," I yelled, my voice cracking with fear. I grabbed the nearest thing, an old, heavy wooden chair from the dining table. I swung it wildly at her, desperate. She sidestepped with surprising agility, the taser still humming. "Feisty. I like that," she said, a hint of genuine amusement in her voice. "Makes it more interesting." I did not stop. I threw the chair, then another. She dodged them easily, her movements fluid and practiced. It was clear she had done this before. I was just another animal in her trap. I spotted another door leading down. A basement, maybe a way out through there. Without thinking, I threw myself at it, fumbling with the latch. It clicked open. I stumbled down a flight of creaky wooden stairs, the darkness below swallowing me whole. "Bad choice." "Alex," her voice called out, closer now. "That is where my best pieces are kept." I hit the bottom of the stairs, landing hard on my knees on a cold concrete floor. The air in the basement was thick, cloying. The smell was overpowering now, a sickening cocktail of rust, decay, and something undeniably human. I tried to stand, my legs shaking. My eyes, now somewhat accustomed to the gloom, made out the shapes. More cages, dozens of them, stacked, lined up, filling the entire basement. And these were not empty. I could hear them now. Soft moans, whimpers, the rustle of movement, and then a clear whisper from a cage directly in front of me, "Help us." My blood ran cold for the 100th time. I saw faces, gaunt and hollow-eyed, pressed against the bars. Men and women, young and old, their eyes filled with despair so profound it stole my breath. They were all there. Sarah's collection. Suddenly, the overhead light flickered on, blinding me. I shielded my eyes, blinking rapidly. When my vision cleared, Sarah was at the bottom of the stairs, a triumphant, chilling smile on her face. She held a heavy, ornate brass key ring, jingling it softly. It was covered in dozens of keys, each one for a padlock. "Welcome to the main gallery. Alex," she said, sweeping her arm around the room like a tour guide. "Are not they beautiful? Each one unique. Each one with a story." She walked slowly towards me, the taser now held casually in her hand. "And soon, you will be right here with them. You will be my masterpiece. Your fear, your desperation is exquisite." My gaze darted around. The cages, the terrified faces. Sarah's cold, triumphant eyes. This was it. This was where I died. Or worse, where I became another one of her living exhibits. But then I saw it, leaning against a stack of empty cages. Half hidden by shadow was a heavy, rusted crowbar. My only chance. As Sarah took another step, raising the taser, I lunged, not at her, but for the crowbar. My fingers closed around the cold, rough metal. It was heavy, but I gripped it tight. Oh, a fight. How exciting. Sarah's voice was almost giddy. She lunged forward, the taser sparking. I swung the crowbar with all my might. It was not graceful. It was not planned. It was pure, desperate instinct. The metal connected with something solid. A sickening thud. Sarah cried out, a sharp, surprised gasp of pain. The taser flew from her hand, skittering across the concrete floor. She stumbled back, clutching her head. A dark, Sticky patch immediately bloomed on her temple. Her eyes, still cold, now held a flicker of something else, shock and then pure rage. "You little rat," she hissed, her voice distorted with pain. This was my chance. I did not hesitate. I did not look back at the terrified faces in the cages. Did not try to open them. I knew I could not. My only thought was escape. I scrambled past her, up the stairs, taking them two at a time. My legs burned, my lungs screamed for air. I burst back into the dining room, then into the living room. Sarah was still stumbling behind me, but I had a head start. The front door, still locked, still chained. I remembered the kitchen, maybe a window there. I threw myself into the kitchen. It was small, cramped. A single window, but it was old and looked like it had been painted shut. But there was a small, flimsy-looking back door, leading out to what looked like a utility area. I grabbed the doorknob. It turned. Hope surged through me, but it was stiff. I tugged, kicked, put my full weight into it. The old wood groaned. Sarah was in the kitchen doorway now. A hand pressed to her bleeding temple, her eyes blazing with murderous intent. She was moving slower, but she was still coming. One last desperate kick. The door burst open with a splintering crack, revealing a small, overgrown backyard. I scrambled through, tearing my clothes on thorns and branches, not caring. I did not stop running. I ran through the overgrown yard, leaped over a rickety fence, and sprinted down the dark, isolated street. I did not look back. I just ran, my heart hammering, the screams of the people in the cages echoing in my mind. Sarah's enraged face burned into my vision. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I collapsed on the side of a dimly lit main road, gasping for air, tears streaming down my face. A truck whizzed by, its headlights blinding me for a moment. I crawled to my feet, stumbled to a brightly lit gas station, and burst inside, shaking uncontrollably. The bewildered attendant stared at my disheveled appearance, my torn clothes, the blood on my hands from where I would scrape them. "Call the police." I choked out, barely able to speak. "Please. There are people in cages." She has people. The police arrived quickly. I was a mess, hysterical, barely coherent. But I managed to give them Sarah's address, describing the house, the cages, the horrifying reality of what I would seen. They took me to the station, got my statement, and sent a patrol car to the address. I sat there, shivering, waiting, praying they would find them, that they would save those poor souls. An hour later, the officers returned. Their faces were grim. "Mr. Peterson," one of them said, his voice cautious. "We went to the address you provided. The house is there, just as you described it." My heart leaped. "And the people, the cages, did you find them?" He paused, exchanging a look with his partner. "The house was empty, sir. Completely empty. No one there. No cages. No evidence of anyone having lived there recently, beyond some dust and old furniture." My blood ran cold. "What? No, that is impossible. I saw them. I saw the cages. I saw the people. She was there." She hit me. I pointed to the bruise already forming on my temple from where I would hit the crowbar. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and skepticism. There was no sign of forced entry. No blood. No signs of a struggle. The house was quiet, completely undisturbed. They explained that maybe in my intoxicated state, I had imagined it. That perhaps it was a misunderstanding, a bad trip. They even suggested I might have been drugged, though I had not felt any lingering effects beyond the sheer terror. I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I had not imagined it. I had seen those faces. I had heard those whimpers. I had felt the cold, hard metal of that crowbar in my hands. They eventually let me go, advising me to seek counseling. They said they would keep an eye on the address, but without any evidence, There was not much they could do. I went home that night, but I could not sleep. Every shadow was Sarah. Every creak of the floorboards was her footsteps. The metallic smell seemed to cling to my clothes, to my skin. I never went on a dating app again. I moved a few months later to a different part of the city, hoping to escape the memory. But it didn't. All right, so you remember Sarah, right? The cages, the metallic smell, the eyes staring out from the darkness. Yeah, that whole nightmare. It has been a while since then. Long enough that the police officially closed the case, calling it a stress-induced hallucination or some other garbage. They even suggested I might have been drugged, which, believe me, made me want to scream. Because I knew what I saw. I knew it was real. But when everyone around you, including the people whose job it is to protect you, tells you you are crazy, it starts to mess with your head. I spent months in a haze. Therapy, medication. My friends tried to be supportive, but I could see the pity in their eyes, the way they would subtly change the subject if I even hinted at Sarah. It was like I was a ticking time bomb, liable to go off at any moment with another wild story about human cages. So, I learned to keep it to myself. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended to be healing. But the truth was, I was not healing. I was just existing. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every unexpected noise sent my heart into a frenzy. I stopped trusting people, especially men, because Sarah, for all her terrifying reality, had been a woman. But the common thread was a charming facade, the sudden reveal of something monstrous underneath. My friends, bless their naive hearts, thought the solution was to get back out there, to find someone normal. Normal. What even was normal anymore? But they pushed, and eventually, exhausted and desperate for any semblance of a life that did not involve me staring at my ceiling at 3 a.m., I gave in. I reactivated my dating app profile. But this time it was different. I was a hawk. Every profile was scrutinized, every photo analyzed for a hint of something off. I swiped left on anyone too perfect, too intense, too vague. I was looking for boring. I guess, safe, predictable. And then I saw Mark. His profile picture was a candid shot, a slight smile, a bit of stubble. He looked approachable, not chiseled, not overtly sexy, just a regular guy. His bio was concise software engineer, loves hiking, dark humor, and trying new coffee shops. Okay, dark humor was a slight red flag, but compared to unique collections or containment, it seemed pretty benign. He was 34, a few years older than me. He seemed grounded. He did not have any shirtless gym selfies or photos with exotic animals. Just him. I swiped right. Almost instantly. I got a match notification. Mark had swiped right too. My stomach did a little flip, a mix of apprehension, and a strange, almost forgotten flicker of hope. We started texting. And to my surprise, it was easy. Mark was witty, intelligent, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. He asked about my job, my hobbies, my thoughts on obscure indie films. He did not push for a meetup immediately, which I appreciated. He was patient. He let the conversation flow naturally, building a rapport over several days. He never seemed to miss a beat. If I mentioned a random thought, he would bring it up later. If I talked about a bad day, he would send a funny meme. It felt nice. Normal. Like I was finally connecting with someone who was not trying to sell me a dream or lure me into a basement. After about a week of constant texting and a couple phone calls that stretched late into the night, he finally suggested we meet. Coffee. Somewhere public, no pressure, just to see if we are as charming in person as we are over text. He even added a winking emoji. I agreed. My heart was thumping, a familiar drumbeat of anxiety, but also a tiny spark of excitement. Maybe this time it will be different. Maybe I could actually have a normal life again. The coffee shop was bustling, which was exactly what I wanted. Lots of people, Lots of noise. Safety in numbers. I spotted him immediately. He looked just like his pictures, maybe a little taller. He had kind eyes, a warm smile, and a slightly nervous energy that actually put me at ease. He was not overly slick or confident, which I had learned to distrust. "Alex." "Mark," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, but not crushing. "Hi," I replied, my voice a little breathless. We ordered our coffees, found a small table, and started talking. And it was just as easy in person as it had been over text. He made me laugh. He listened intently when I spoke. He seemed thoughtful, intelligent, and genuinely curious about the world. He talked about his work in software development, his love for old sci-fi novels, and his dream of one day hiking the Appalachian Trail. He seemed wholesome. There was only one tiny thing, a fleeting moment. As I was talking about my job, I caught him looking at me, not at my eyes, but at my mouth, then down my neck, almost like he was assessing something. It was just for a split second, and then his gaze was back on my eyes, attentive and warm. I dismissed it, probably just my paranoia kicking in. Sarah had poisoned my perception of everything. The first date went well. So well, in fact, that we scheduled a second, and then a third. We went to dinner, saw a movie, walked through a park. With each date, I felt a little more comfortable, a little more myself. Mark was a gentleman. He opened doors, paid for meals, walked me my car. He never pushed for anything more than a good night kiss on the cheek. He was respectful. He was everything I thought I wanted. He even started to open up about his past, albeit vaguely. He mentioned a troubled youth, making mistakes, and how he would work hard to turn his life around. I related to that, not the troubled youth part, but the idea of a past that haunts you, that you are trying to escape. I saw it as a shared vulnerability, a sign that he was being honest with me, even if he was not ready to divulge all the details. I admired his resilience. After a few months, Mark and I were practically inseparable. He was attentive, remembered small details about my life, and made me feel safe in a way I had not since before Sarah. He was the antidote. He was a proof that not everyone was a monster in disguise. I started to let my guard down, slowly, cautiously, but surely. I found myself smiling more, sleeping better. I even started to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could have a normal life again. But then, the cracks started to show. Small things at first, things I initially dismissed or rationalized away. He was always available. Like, unnervingly so. If I texted him at 2 a.m., he would reply. If I spontaneously suggested a plan, he would drop everything. It felt sweet at first, but then it started to feel a little too much. He did not seem to have many other commitments, or at least, he never talked about them. He rarely mentioned friends or family. His past, beyond the vague troubled youth, remained a blank slate. One evening, we were driving and someone cut him off aggressively. Mark slammed on the brakes, and for a split second, his face contorted into something I barely recognized. A flash of pure, unadulterated rage. His jaw was clenched, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, and his eyes, they were cold, devoid of any warmth. It lasted only a second. Then he took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Geez, sorry. Alex, that guy really got to me. I need to work on my road rage." "Huh?" He chuckled, but the image of his face, that brief, terrifying glimpse of something primal, stuck with me. He also became incredibly protective, almost possessive. If I mentioned going out with my friends, he would subtly try to redirect. "Oh, I was hoping we could have a cozy night in. Just us. I have not seen you all week." Or if I mentioned a male friend, he would get quiet, his smile tightening. "He sounds interesting. Just be careful, not everyone has good intentions." It was not overt control, but a slow, insidious isolation. He made me feel like he was the only one who truly cared, the only one I could truly trust. And then there was his intense gaze. Sometimes, when we were just talking, or even when we were intimate, he would just stare at me. Not lovingly, but like he was trying to read my mind or see through me. It was like he was analyzing me, trying to uncover some hidden truth. And he was overly curious about my past relationships, and particularly about my traumatic experience. He would ask probing questions about Sarah, about how I felt, what I saw, how the police reacted. He would listen intently, nodding, but his eyes, they never quite seemed to show empathy. More like a detached, clinical interest, like he was studying a specimen. I dismissed it all. My paranoia. I told myself. My trauma. I was looking for trouble where there was none. Mark was good to me. He made me feel safe. I was finally happy. I could not let my past ruin this. Then came the night that changed everything. We were at his apartment. It was a cozy place, meticulously clean, almost sterile. Few personal touches, which I found odd for someone who'd lived there for years, but I would chalk it up to him being a minimalist. We would have dinner, watch a movie, and we're just curled up on the couch, talking. The lights were low, the atmosphere intimate and warm. I felt completely relaxed, completely safe. He would have been quiet for a while, just holding me. Then he took a deep breath. "Alex," he started, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "There is something I need to tell you. Something important." My heart instantly leaped into my throat. This was it. The shoe dropping. My mind raced through 1,000 scenarios. He had a secret family. He was moving away. He was sick. But none of them prepared me for what came next. I had been in prison, he said, his voice barely a whisper. He pulled back slightly, looking at me, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. My breath hitched. Prison. My mind immediately flashed to the vague, troubled youth comments, but prison. That was a whole different ball game. Prison. For what? I managed to croak out, my voice barely audible. He took another deep breath. For murder. The world tilted. The warm, cozy apartment suddenly felt cold, suffocating. The air was thick, heavy. My heart was not just thumping, it was hammering against my ribs, trying to escape. Murder. The word echoed in my head, a terrifying counterpoint to the gentle hum of the refrigerator. Sarah. Cages. Panic. It all rushed back, a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated terror. This was not happening. Not again. I pulled away from him, my body rigid, my eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Murder. I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Mark, what are you talking about?" He looked down, then back up at me, his eyes suddenly filled with a strange mix of regret and something else I could not quite decipher. It was a long time ago. "Alex, when I was young, I was caught up in a bad crowd. A gang. There was a fight. Things got out of hand. It was self-defense. I swear, I protected myself. But someone died. And I did my time. I paid my debt to society." He reached for my hand, but I flinched away, my entire body recoiling. Self-defense. I whispered, my voice trembling. You killed someone." "Yes," he said, his voice firm now, almost defiant. "But it was not who I am now. I have changed. Alex, I swear to you." I wanted to be honest. I could not keep it from you anymore. I care about you too much. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Fear, overwhelming primal fear. Disbelief, but also a strange, desperate rationalization. He was being honest, right? He confessed. He told me. Maybe he had changed. People make mistakes. People get caught up in things. And he did his time. He was trying to be a better man. Was I going to punish him for his past? Would that make me a bad person? But the image of that brief flash of rage in his eyes when someone cut him off it resurfaced. The coldness, the intensity, was that the man who killed someone. Was he truly reformed? Or was he just better at hiding it now? Alex, please say something, he pleaded, his voice soft again, almost vulnerable. I know this is a lot. I understand if you want to leave. But I needed you to know. I want to build something real with you, and that means being completely honest. His honesty felt like a trap, a carefully laid snare. He told me this, knowing it would shatter my world, but also knowing that by confessing, he was putting me in an impossible position. If I left, would I be abandoning a changed man? If I stayed, was I putting my life in the hands of a killer? And what about Sarah? The police did not believe me then. Who would believe me now if I said my new boyfriend, who just confessed a murder, was a danger? I would sound utterly insane. I did not leave that night. I could not. I was paralyzed. I mumbled something about needing time to process, about it being a lot to take in. He nodded, looking understanding, but his eyes, they held a strange, triumphant glint I could not place. He hugged me tightly, so tightly I could barely breathe, whispering, I knew you would understand. I knew you were different. The next few days were a blur of internal torment. I went through the motions, went to work, saw my friends, but my mind was constantly replaying Mark's confession, scrutinizing every interaction we would ever had. Every casual touch, every intense gaze, every protective comment now felt menacing. Mark, on the other hand, was even more attentive. He was suffocatingly sweet, constantly checking in, bringing me flowers, cooking my favorite meals. It was like he was trying to bind me to him, to erase any doubt. But his attentiveness now felt like surveillance. He seemed to know my schedule, without me telling him. Had a busy day at work. Huh. I saw your car was still there when I drove by. Or, you looked tired after your yoga class this morning. He had never mentioned driving by my work or knowing my yoga schedule. It was always casual, always framed as caring, but it made my skin crawl. I tried to research him. I typed his name, Mark Jensen, into Gutgoo, along with murder, prison, gang. Nothing. No news articles, no public records. It was like he did not exist before a certain point, or his past was completely scrubbed clean. This only deepened my unease. If he was truly honest, would not there be something? Or was it so long ago, or a juvenile record? Or was he using an alias? The possibilities spun in my head, each one more terrifying than the last. I started noticing other things in his meticulously clean apartment, hidden in a drawer beneath some neatly folded T-shirts. I found a small, professional-looking lock-picking set. Not a toy, but the real deal. When I asked him about it casually, he just chuckled. Oh, that? Just a hobby. Fascinating how locks work, you know? Good for puzzles. His explanation was too smooth, too practiced. Another time, I saw a roll of heavy-duty nylon rope tucked away in the back of his closet, behind some rarely worn coats. It was not camping rope, or anything you would use for typical household tasks. It was thick, strong, almost industrial. My mind immediately went to Sarah's cages, to the heavy padlocks. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. His conversations also started to take on a darker tone. He would talk about human nature, about how people are inherently weak, how they need to be guided, contained for their own good. He would say things like, some people just need a stronger hand. Alex, they crave control, even if they do not admit it. The word containment sent shivers down my spine. It was too close to Sarah. Too close to the horrifying reality I would try so desperately to forget. The mask was slipping, slowly, terrifyingly. The charming, reformed man I thought I knew was dissolving, revealing something far more sinister underneath. The intensity in his eyes was not just passion, it was a predatory gaze. His protectiveness was not love, it was possessiveness, a desire to own and control. His honesty about his past was just another manipulation, a way to test my boundaries, to see how much I would tolerate, how deeply he could ensnare me. One afternoon, I was at his place while he was working in his home office room. He rarely let me into, always claiming he needed focus. I was making lunch, my mind racing, trying to formulate an escape plan. I knew I could not just confront him. I knew I could not just walk out. He was always watching. He knew where I lived, where I worked, who my friends were. I was trapped, but as I passed his office, I heard him. His voice was low, hushed, almost a whisper, but it carried through the slightly ajar door. He was not on a work call. He was talking to someone else. Yeah, she is perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. A little broken, a little vulnerable. The trauma makes her pliable. And the best part, she does not have anyone who'd believe her. Not after the last time. My blood ran cold. My entire body went numb. She is perfect. A little broken, a little vulnerable. The trauma makes her pliable. He was talking about me. He knew about Sarah. He had been studying me, observing me, just like I suspected. And he was reveling in my vulnerability. Then he chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent ice through my veins. The confession. Oh, that was a stroke of genius. Throws them off, makes them think you are honest. And it makes them question their own sanity. Makes them feel like they are the bad guy if they do not forgive you. Works every time. He was not reformed. He was not honest. He was a monster, a calculated, manipulative predator who had meticulously chosen me because of my past, because he knew I was an easy target, someone who would not be believed. The murder was likely true, but the self-defense was a lie, and the confession was just another tool in his arsenal of control. I could not breathe. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I had to get out. Now, I crept away from the door, my heart pounding so hard I thought he would hear it. I had to play it cool. I had to act normal. I went back to the kitchen, my mind racing, trying to think of an excuse to leave. Just then his office door opened, and he emerged, a warm smile on his face. Hey, babe. Everything okay? You are awfully quiet. I forced a smile, a brittle, fake thing. Yeah, just thinking about work. Stressful day. My voice was shaky, but I hoped he would not notice. Actually, I just remembered I have an early meeting tomorrow. I should probably head home and get some rest. His smile faltered. Just for a second, his eyes narrowed, that familiar intense gaze sweeping over me. Oh, so suddenly, I thought we were going to have a cozy night in. I know. I am so sorry. I gushed, trying to sound genuinely apologetic. But this meeting is really important. Big client. I can't afford to mess it up. He stared at me for another long, agonizing moment. I could feel the tension radiating off him. He was weighing my words, trying to see through my facade. My heart was a drum solo in my chest. Finally, he exhaled, and the smile returned, though it did not quite reach his eyes. All right, if you say so. But you will call me when you get home, right? Text me when you are on your way. Of course. I said, probably too eagerly. I will text you as soon as I leave. I practically ran to grab my purse and keys. Every second felt like an eternity. As I walked toward the front door, he followed me, his presence a heavy weight behind me. Let me walk you out, he said, his voice smooth, but I could feel the unspoken threat in his tone. He was not walking me out, he was watching me leave. At the door, he pulled me into a hug, a tight, possessive embrace. His lips brushed my ear. You know, Alex, he whispered, his voice dangerously soft. I really appreciate your honesty and your understanding. Not many people would be as accepting of my past. It means a lot to me. My stomach churned. He was mocking me. He was playing with me. I forced myself to hug him back, to give him a quick peck on the cheek, my entire body screaming in revulsion. See you tomorrow, I said, my voice barely holding steady. Oh, you definitely will, he replied, his smile widening, his eyes glinting with a terrifying certainty. I stumbled out of his apartment, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped them. I got into my car, started the engine, and peeled out of his driveway, not daring to look in my rearview mirror. I just drove, faster and faster, until the street was a distant memory. I did not go home. I drove straight to the nearest police station, my mind a chaotic mess of fear and desperation. This time, I had proof. This time, they had to believe me. But when I burst into the station, hysterical, recounting the story, the confession, the lockpicks, the rope, the overheard conversation, their faces morphed into familiar expressions. Pity, skepticism, the same expressions I would seen after the Sarah incident. Madam, we understand you've been through a lot, the officer said, his voice calm, patronizing. But you are saying your boyfriend confessed to murder, but there is no record of it, and now you think he is planning to hurt you based on a partial conversation you overheard. That is a little thin. He said I was pliable. He said my trauma made me easy to manipulate. I cried, tears streaming down my face. He knew about Sarah. He picked me because of it. They took my statement. They promised to look into it. They even sent a patrol car to Mark's apartment. But when they came back, their report was exactly what I expected. Mark Jensen, charming, articulate, answered the door calmly. He expressed concern for my distress, suggested I might be going through a rough patch, and politely denied everything. They found nothing incriminating in his apartment. No lockpicks, no rope, no hidden journals. He was too careful. He was too good. I was left with the same crushing feeling of disbelief, the same haunting sense of being unheard. But this time, the fear was even deeper, more insidious. I had almost fallen for it. I had almost let another monster into my life. The world was not just dangerous, it was a carefully constructed illusion, and I was perpetually stuck behind the curtain, seeing the strings, the masks, the horrors that everyone else refused to acknowledge. I moved. I changed my number. I deleted all my social media. I live in constant hypervigilance, looking over my shoulder, distrusting every friendly face, every kind word. The faces in Sarah's cages and the chilling memory of Mark's triumphant smile are etched into my mind, a permanent reminder that some monsters do not need to be locked up behind bars. They walk among us, charming and manipulative, preying on the vulnerable, and sometimes they even tell you exactly who they are, knowing you are too terrified, too desperate for normalcy, to believe them. All right, let's talk about something that happened to me recently. Something that, honestly, just hammered home the idea that even when you think you are being careful, even when you think you have learned your lesson, the world still finds new ways to show you how vulnerable you are. You know my story by now, right? The whole Mark situation. The police dismissing me. The months spent feeling like I was losing my mind. The hypervigilance that became my constant companion. It is hard to describe what that kind of experience does to you. It does not just make you scared of people, it makes you scared of yourself. Scared you are crazy. Scared you are overreacting. Scared you will never see the truth again until it is too late. After I ran from Mark, after I moved and cut ties, I thought I was safe. Physically, maybe, but mentally, I was a wreck. Every shadow was a threat. Every stranger a potential predator. Dating. Forget about it. The idea of letting anyone that close again, of opening myself up to that kind of manipulation, was just unthinkable. I deleted all my apps, swore off relationships. I told myself I was fine. I was better off alone. But loneliness, man, it is a persistent little demon. It whispers to you when the nights are long, when you see couples laughing in restaurants, when your friends talk about their significant others. It tells you that maybe, just maybe, you are strong enough now, that you can handle it, that you deserve some normalcy, some connection. So, against every single screaming instinct, I reactivated one of my dating apps. Not because I was looking for love, not even really for a relationship. I was looking for proof that I was not broken. I was looking for someone utterly, completely, mind-numbingly boring. Someone who would not trigger a single alarm bell. Someone who would just exist. And that is when I found Chloe. Her profile was exactly what I was looking for. She was a librarian. A librarian. She loved cats, posted pictures of her bookshelf, and had a surprisingly witty bio about the Dewey Decimal System. She seemed sweet, unassuming, and completely, utterly safe. No red flags. No intense hobbies. No mysterious past. Just books and cats. Perfect. We matched, and her messages were prompt, polite, and full of emojis that felt a little generic. Again, perfect. No intense probing. No weird overfamiliarity. Just pleasant, surface-level chat. We talked about books, about the weather, about the best local coffee shops. It was exactly what I needed. A gentle dip back into the shallow end of the social pool. After a few days of messaging, she suggested we grab coffee. A public place, during the day. My rule. I felt a surge of relief that she suggested it without me having to. It felt like a good sign. Maybe I was finally getting back to normal. The coffee shop was bustling, which I liked. Lots of people, lots of noise. Hard for anyone to get too comfortable or too private. Chloe was already there when I arrived, sitting at a small table by the window, sipping a latte. She was exactly as her pictures portrayed her, pretty in a quiet way, with kind eyes and a friendly smile. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, nothing flashy. "Hey," I said, walking up to the table, trying to project an air of calm I definitely did not feel. My heart was thumping a little, but it was more nerves than actual fear. A good sign. I told myself. "Hi," she replied, her smile widening. "Glad you could make it." We ordered, and the conversation flowed easily enough. She asked about my work, my hobbies. I kept my answers vague, especially about my past, still wary. I mentioned my love for hiking, carefully omitting the parts about how I now always carry a satellite communicator and pepper spray. She seemed genuinely interested, nodding along. But then, the first tiny flicker of unease. Nothing major, not even a red flag, just a yellow one. She kept her phone on the table, which, fine, lots of people do. But she was constantly picking it up, checking it, typing something, then putting it back down. Each time, she would offer a quick, apologetic smile. "Oh, sorry," she would say. "Just a work thing. You know how it is." Or, "My sister is having a crisis. Got to keep an eye on it." I tried to be understanding. We all have busy lives. But I could not help but notice the angle of her phone. Whenever she put it down, it was often propped up against her water glass or sugar packet, angled slightly towards me. Not directly, not obviously, but enough that the camera lens would have a clear shot of me. I dismissed it. Paranoia. I told myself, "You are looking for things that are not there. She is just holding her phone naturally. It is probably angled that way so she can see the screen better. Or maybe she is just clumsy." Still, the thought lingered. A tiny, annoying itch at the back of my mind. She asked about my family, my friends. Again, I kept it light, superficial. I learned she had a sister, that she loved to travel, that her favorite book was Pride and Prejudice. All perfectly normal, perfectly boring. Exactly what I wanted. By the end of the coffee date, I felt cautiously optimistic. No alarms went off. No gut-wrenching dread. Just a mild sense of relief. Maybe this was it. Maybe I could actually do this. We agreed to a second date. Dinner. Again, a public place. A mid-range restaurant with good lighting and plenty of other diners. This time, Chloe seemed more relaxed, more comfortable. She laughed more easily, share more anecdotes. She was charming, really, and I found myself starting to let my guard down, just a little. But the phone thing continued, and it escalated. She would place her phone on the table, propped up, screen facing me. Oh, just keeping an eye on my notifications, she would say, almost preemptively, as if she knew I was noticing. Sometimes, she would even pick it up and pretend to scroll, then put it back down, still angled. I watched the reflection in the window behind her, trying to catch a glimpse of what she was doing. Was she texting? Browsing? It was hard to tell in the dim restaurant light. At one point, she excused herself to the restroom. As she walked away, her phone was in her hand, and I swear, I saw her glance back at the table, her eyes briefly sweeping over me before she disappeared around the corner. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but it sent a little shiver down my spine. When she came back, she seemed even more animated, more engaged. She started asking more specific questions. What was the most challenging period of your life? She asked, her eyes wide and sympathetic. And how did you get through it? My heart did a little flutter kick. This was dangerously close to the kind of probing I would learn to dread. I deflected, of course, giving a vague answer about professional challenges, steering clear of anything remotely personal or traumatic. She seemed to accept it, but I noticed a slight disappointment in her eyes, quickly masked by another sympathetic smile. Later, as we were talking about travel, I happened to be looking at her phone, which was propped up on the table, and for a split second, I saw a tiny, almost invisible red light flicker near the top of the screen, like a recording indicator. My blood ran cold, but then I blinked and it was gone. Just a reflection. I told myself, the restaurant lights, my overactive imagination. I finished the date feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe she was just a bit addicted to her phone, a little clumsy with how she placed it. The other part, the part that Mark had forged in fire, screamed that something was off. It was too consistent, too deliberate. Still, she was so nice, so normal on the surface, and I was so desperate for normal. So, when she suggested a third date, a quiet bar with good cocktails, I said yes. I told myself I was being brave, facing my fears. In reality, I think I was just hoping to prove my paranoia wrong. The bar was cozy, dimly lit, with a few other couples scattered around. We got a table by a large window, which I usually liked. It offered a nice view of the street outside, and the faint light from the moon and street lights was atmospheric. Chloe was in high spirits. She ordered a fancy cocktail and started telling me a story about a funny incident at the library. She was animated, her hands gesturing, her eyes sparkling. She placed her phone on the table, as usual. This time, it was propped up against the menu, angled directly at me. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I tried to focus on her story, on her laughter, but the subtle angle of the phone, the way it seemed to be silently watching me, was a persistent distraction. As she was mid-sentence, talking about a particularly demanding patron, I happened to glance at the window behind her. The glass was dark, creating a perfect mirror-like reflection of our table, the bar, and us. And there it was. In the reflection, I could clearly see Chloe, her animated face, her gesturing hands. And next to her, propped against the menu, was her phone. And on the screen of her phone, clearly visible in the reflection, was my face. Live, being recorded. My breath hitched. The world tilted. It was not a selfie camera. It was the main camera, the one on the back of the phone, pointed directly at me. The image in the reflection showed my face, my eyes, my slight smile as I listened to her story. It was perfectly framed, a close-up shot of me, completely unaware. My blood ran cold. A wave of nausea washed over me. The Mark incident, the feeling of being watched, studied, contained, it all came rushing back with a sickening force. This was not a reflection of my imagination. This was real. I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. Chloe was still talking, oblivious of the fact that I had just seen her secret. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought she must surely hear it. My hands started to tremble slightly, so I clasped them together under the table. I needed to confirm it. I needed to know I was not hallucinating, was not letting my past trauma invent things. I subtly shifted in my seat, leaning back slightly. In the reflection, my image on her phone screen shifted too. I cleared my throat, then raised my hand to scratch my chin, a common nervous habit. In the reflection, my image on her screen mimicked the movement. Then, I saw it. In the top corner of her phone screen, visible in the reflection, was a tiny, unmistakable red, the universal symbol for recording. She was not just checking her phone. She was not just clumsy. She was filming me. She had been filming me, probably since the first coffee date. Every word, every expression, every moment of vulnerability, every attempt I made to be normal again, all of it captured. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The questions she would ask about my past, about my challenges, her sympathetic eyes, it was not genuine interest. It was research. It was content. I was not a date, I was a subject. My mind raced. What was she doing with it? Was she live streaming? Saving it? For what? A blog, a social media account, a true crime podcast where I was the unwitting star. The possibilities were endless, and each one was more horrifying than the last. My first instinct was to confront her, to grab her phone, to demand an explanation. But then Mark's face flashed in my mind. His knowing smile. The police dismissing my claims. No, confrontation was dangerous. I had no idea what kind of person she truly was, what her intentions were. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that if I confronted her, she would deny it, twist it, make me look like the crazy one. Again, I needed to get out. Now, I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice steady. Chloe, I am so sorry. I interrupted, putting on my most apologetic, distressed face. I just got a text. My sister, she just called. There's an emergency. I have to go. Right now. I made it sound urgent, frantic. I grabbed my wallet, pulling out some cash. Please, let me cover my share. I am so sorry. This is completely unexpected. She looked at me, her smile faltering. There was a flicker in her eyes, a strange mix of surprise and something else. Disappointment, annoyance, or was it just a momentary lapse in her performance? Oh, really, she said, her voice a little too calm. Everything okay? I hope so, I said, already standing up, pushing the money across the table. I really have to go. I will text you later. Okay. I did not wait for her reply. I practically ran out of the bar, not looking back. I felt her eyes on me, burning into my back, until I was outside in the cool night air. I did not stop until I was in my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get them into the ignition. I started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and drove. I drove and drove, not caring where I was going, just needing to put distance between myself and that bar, between myself and Chloe. When I finally got home, the adrenaline crash hit me hard. I felt sick to my stomach, violated, exposed. I paced my apartment. The image of my face on her phone screen burned into my mind. My mind went straight to the internet. I had to know. I typed her name into GutGoo, into social media sites. Chloe, librarian, her city. It took a while, sifting through common names, but eventually, I found her. She had a personal IU2B, full of cat pictures and book reviews, exactly as innocuous as her dating profile. But then, tucked away in her profile, was a link to another account, IU2B channel. My stomach dropped. I clicked it. The channel was called People Watching. It had a decent number of subscribers. And the videos, oh God, the videos. They were not about true crime, not directly. They were social experiments, observational studies. She would film unsuspecting people in public places, coffee shops, parks, libraries, sometimes even on dates, and then she would add her own commentary, analyzing their body language, their reactions, their responses to certain questions. She would create narratives about them, speculate about their lives, their personalities. And then I saw it, a new video, uploaded just a few hours ago. The title, The Guarded Gaze Deconstructing Trauma Responses on a First Date. My blood ran cold. My hands trembled so violently, I almost dropped my phone. I clicked on it, and there I was. My face, my expressions, my guarded answers, my attempt to deflect her questions about my past. Her voice, calm and clinical, narrating over the footage. Notice the subtle tension in his jaw here. She would say, the slight shift in his eyes when asked about vulnerability. A classic trauma response, indicating a past experience of significant emotional distress. It was not just the third date. It was the first coffee date, the second dinner date. Every single interaction. She had recorded it all. She had been studying me, dissecting me, turning my attempts at normalcy into her content. My pain, my fear, my very real trauma. It was all just data for her twisted little project. I felt a scream building in my chest, but I could not let out. I just stared at the screen, watching myself, watching her dissect me like a specimen under a microscope. She was not a monster in the traditional sense. She was not marked, threatening physical harm. But in some ways, this felt even more insidious, more violating. She had not just taken pictures, she had taken me. She had taken my story, my vulnerability, and turned it into entertainment for strangers. Without my consent, without my knowledge. I closed the video, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I felt utterly exposed, stripped bare. The hope for normalcy, for connection, that I had so desperately clung to, shattered into a million pieces. I thought about going to the police. But what would I say? My date filmed me without my consent and posted it online. They would probably laugh. It is public domain. Sir, you were in public. There is no law against filming in a coffee shop. They would dismiss me again, just like with Mark. They would tell me I was overreacting, that I was crazy, and maybe in their eyes, I was. I deleted all my dating apps again. This time, there was no hesitation, no lingering hope. The world, I realized, was full of different kinds of monsters. Some want to hurt you physically. Some want to contain you. And some, like Chloe, want to consume you, exploit you, turn your very existence into their content. They leave no physical scars, no visible wounds. But they leave you feeling hollowed out, utterly exposed, and more alone than ever. The hypervigilance I would develop after Mark, it is not going away. It is just expanded. Now, every person I meet, every interaction I have, I wonder, am I being watched? Am I being recorded? Am I, without my knowledge, part of someone else's twisted show? And sometimes, no one believes the truth, not even when it is staring them in the face, on an IUTB channel called People Watching.